Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was the hero of Courage Part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, TheHinokami from WhatIf. So let's start the video. Third POV. Early morning on a nice July day, everyone in the area could hear a scream that could be heard from the home of one Midoriya residents. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, get in here now. My water broke, said a voice from a woman. A male came running downstairs and almost fell as he did so. I'm here, 𝗃𝗀𝗁. What did you say happened? The man identified as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 asked. The woman, who is now known as 𝗃𝗀𝗁, just looked at him and said, "Why? Water broke." And then he paled. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 froze for a few moments until 𝗃𝗀𝗁 just slapped him on the back of the head, telling him to get moving. He started to run around like a chicken without its head. After the wife calmed down the husband, they soon got into the car and made their way to the hospital. The wife was getting closer and closer to the 𝗧𝗨𝗧𝗛𝗏, and soon they arrived at the hospital. 𝗃𝗀𝗁 just told her husband to hurry it up as they made their way into the emergency room. The nurses asked what was wrong and were told that 𝗃𝗀𝗁 water broke and would be going into LBR. They got her onto a bed and had her transferred to the medical ward for babies. It was 3 grueling hours later when the nurse came out and brought 𝗧𝗵𝗃 into the operating room. It was here that 𝗧𝗵𝗃 saw for the first time their baby boy, who had come into the world with his green hair and green eyes. He took your hair and eyes, but it seems he got my hairstyle. I feel for him with this unruly hair. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 stated as 𝗃𝗀𝗁 just laughed a bit since she was too tired from pushing her son out. The doctors came in and did the final checks over 𝗃𝗀𝗁 and the baby. Everything is done. We just need a name for your child. Any ideas, or do you need some time? The doctor asked as he filled out the paperwork in preparation for the name being ready. 𝗃𝗀𝗁 and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 looked at each other and they said that they decided to name their son Midoriya Izuku. They said the name at the same time, which the doctor found sweet. The doctor wrote it in and congratulated them. Welcome to the world, Izuku Midoriya, he said as he handed them the paperwork to sign, certifying the 𝗵𝗃𝗏 and name. They signed the paperwork and the doctor took it to go file the paperwork with the government. This was the 𝗵𝗃𝗏 of Izuku Midoriya, who would face many challenges in his life but also stand firm in his determination to challenge the world. Several years have passed and Izuku was now 4 years old. He was in the living room with his mother playing since she had gotten off from work earlier that day. As such, Izuku was dressed up as his favorite hero, All Might, and he had come into the room wanting to save his mother from the mean blanket that was hugging her too hard. I am here to save you, Izuku said as he slid into the room. Though he did almost fall down a few times as he slid around the floor. 𝗃𝗀𝗁 just laughed at her son's antics. As this was going on, you might be wondering, where was 𝗧𝗵𝗃 Midoriya at in all of this fun in the home? As it turns out, when Izuku was 2 years old, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 passed away due to a villain attack that claimed his life on the way home from work one night. The villain was fighting a newer hero when the villain had decided to bolt away from the fight. This villain could turn himself into an iron-moving man who collided with 𝗧𝗵𝗃's car as he came to pass the street where the fight was going on without his knowledge. The villain just ran right into the car and caused it to fly into the other lane where a truck was coming down and struck his side of the car on the side door. This caused 𝗧𝗵𝗃 to die on impact. 𝗃𝗀𝗁 had to go and claim his body, and she decided to have him cremated since she knew money would become tight from now on since she was a single mother. Luckily for her, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 had bought a large life insurance policy without her knowledge. He had been taking money from his checks before he deposited it in the bank and had 2 policies purchased. One on each of them. When the will was read, he explained in it that he had a coworker that died early and left his family with a policy that saved their lives since he was the money earner in the family. After that day, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 bought a policy for both of them, and the policy value was $1 million for his, while hers was at $500,000. His had started out at only a $500,000 policy, but it had a feature where you could invest money inside of it to increase the value. As such, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 had made smart decisions and grew the policy of his to the $1 million mark by adding money to the policy and investing it. This grew to be far more than he invested into it in the first place, and this money would let 𝗃𝗀𝗁 and Izuku be set for the majority of their life as long as she didn't waste it. Hisashi explained inside of his will that her policy wasn't invested into since she didn't work when he bought the two policies, and the aim of her policy was to provide him a PRD of grief and adjustment, which turned into needing money to stay home for some time until Izuku could take care of himself while Hisashi was at work, since they had him after the policies were bought. 𝗵𝗃 was so happy that her husband was smart enough to purchase the policies. It helped her relax a bit since she could wait to start working until he grew up a bit more and they wouldn't lose their home, since 𝗵𝗃 could just take part of the cash now and pay it off since only $100,000 remained on the loan. This way, in any unfortunate events, they would still have a home over their head. Now back to the living room with Izuku at age 4 and him saving his mother from the evil blanket. 𝗵𝗃 had started working lately since Izuku spends the daytime in school, so she decided to start working to help save the excess money they had from Hisashi life policy. They had $800,000 of the life insurance policy left since 𝗵𝗃 had decided to take $100,000 to have the house paid off, and the other $100,000 that has been spent in the last 2 years was for all of their expenses and a newer car for 𝗵𝗃 to travel to and from work. The new car was also used to transport Izuku around town since she didn't want to take him on public transport yet. Izuku kept playing with his mother, unaware of the twist that was going to be coming in his life in the next few days. His mother was getting worried since he hasn't presented a quirk yet. As such, she decided to take Izuku to a quirk doctor in a week to have him checked. She had taken the time off from work and alerted the school of this. As such, the week came and went and it was now time for the trip to the doctor to happen. Izuku was thrilled since he would learn the truth about his quirk. However, that happiness would soon turn to sorrow. As Izuku sat in the play area at the doctor's office for children, he heard his family name be called and he looked for who was calling it. He saw a nurse come up to his mother and start talking to her. After a few minutes of talking, his mother came to grab Izuku and take him somewhere. Izuku soon found that his mother had taken him to a doctor's medical room and where he sat on the table. They took some of his BLD and gave him a lollipop for not crying when they took his BLD. They also did some x-rays of his body. After waiting for about 1 more hour in the waiting room, again the doctor came and called them back to the waiting room. "Hello, Mrs. Midoriya. I'm here to talk to you about your son's results," the doctor said as he pulled the results out of the file and started to look over them. As he read, his face took a look of sadness that 𝗵𝗃 noticed. She asked him what was wrong. He sighed and then put the X-ray onto the screen next to them. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to say that based on the X-ray, your son does not have a quirk, nor should he get one. The human body adapted as he grew with quirks over the generations," he stated, and 𝗵𝗃 had a tear in her eye. She knew quirkless people weren't treated the best in their society. If you look at this X-ray, you can see the double toe joint that is present in quirkless people. With this, we can rule that your son won't develop a quirk. "I'm sorry," he stated. Izuku had dropped his All Might toy on the ground in shock when he processed the words from the doctor. "But I want to be a hero," Izuku muttered, and the doctor looked at Izuku with sadness and apologized and said that it would be best to give it up. This world is harsh towards those without quirks. It would be impossible for someone to be a quirkless hero, the doctor stated. Izuku just had a few tears down his face since it was still hitting him. 𝗵𝗃 thanked the doctor and took Izuku home. The ride home was silent and only the radio was on. It was playing one of those All Might commercials for a local restaurant that was branded in his theme. Izuku felt sadness washed over him. He wanted to be a hero that made people happy and helped them feel safe. He wanted to be a hero similar to All Might, and the world was telling him that he couldn't do that. The wind during the day had started to get cool as it was going into early fall. It wasn't cold really, but it had a nice feeling to it. However, the wind felt cold and hollow to Izuku due to the news he received. He just got out of the car when they arrived home and went to his room. 𝗵𝗃 came into his room about 30 minutes later and found Izuku looking at the computer. He had the debut of All Might playing on it as he turned around to 𝗵𝗃 and had some tears in his eyes. He asked her the simple question, "Can I be a hero too?" he asked her. 𝗵𝗃 froze at that question. She didn't know what to say. All she could do was apologize to her son and hug him with tears coming out of her eyes and down her face just like her son. The only thing that was going through Inko's mind as she hugged her son was how unfair the world was to let children be born into a world of quirked humans and not grant a young child with a golden heart like Izuku without a quirk of his own. Izuku just sat there with tears coming down his face and his eyes widen. He wanted his mother to support him and tell him that his dream was possible. However, he knew that she still loved him even if she couldn't tell him yes to his question because she was his mother and she always loved him no matter what. Izuku was saddened and hurt that she did not say yes, but he still loved her regardless. A few more years would come to pass and Izuku would suffer a lot of discrimination from his peers who would laugh at him and pick on him for his dreams even though he is quirkless. He would also suffer discrimination from his caretakers at school who were meant to protect him. They constantly tell him that he would never amount to anything because he lacks a single gene in his body and has one extra bone in his toe. However, Izuku refuses to submit to their words. Each day Izuku just keeps pushing forward on his path. He decided to start writing down facts and information that he would gather from hero fights. He analyzed the fights the best he could. The reason for this is because he wanted to understand how quirks were used in fights and how people added fighting styles to their combat to aid their quirks. Izuku though noticed a lot of heroes and villains just relied on their quirks without much of a fighting style at all. Sure, some heroes had a fighting style, but if you were to remove the quirk their fighting style wouldn't work at all and they would be dead weight. As Izuku was mumbling his way through the day, a bully from one of his classes decided to push him around. The bully said many things, but one thing actually stuck out to Izuku. He almost missed it because he just ignores everything they say each time they pick on him. The bully's words were, "How do you plan to be a hero when you can't physically fight? You are physically too weak, you quirkless freak." He stated as he punched Izuku in the stomach, making him almost throw up his lunch. The teacher walked over and said that it was enough and to get moving along. That was the thing that Izuku disliked the most. The teachers knew the physical and verbal bullying was going on and never did anything. It sometimes happened right in front of them, but they never did anything to stop it. Izuku was just glad the bullying only happened one or two every few weeks, and they stuck to verbal attacks most of the time. It made life so much easier, unlike some of the quirkless stories that Izuku had read online. They talked about how they were suicided, baited constantly, and beaten up on a daily basis with people using their quirks on them. Izuku had people use their quirks a few times a month, but not to the degree that other quirkless people talk about. Izuku thought about the words the bully had said. Normally he ignores it all, but this stuck with him for some reason. He then started to self-analyze himself as if he was a third party. He started listing strengths and weaknesses and areas of improvement. He then realized what the bully meant and he felt as he was an idiot. All of this time I've been increasing my mental abilities, but never did I work on my physical abilities. Izuku said to himself. He knew that he would need to figure out a way to start doing this. Then he realized that his late father had some weights in one of the closets. As such, Izuku had made plans to secure the weights and move them to his room once he returned home. He didn't want his mother asking about them, so he needed to do it one day while she had to work late into the night. Izuku had also planned out a route that he would start running that was safe to travel on so he could start increasing his physical conditioning. Without knowing it, Izuku's bully had only encouraged Izuku to change his habits and get into a better shape to try and chase his dream. He refused to allow his dream to be some impossible dream. He had learned about underground heroes and knew that he had a better shot at being one of them than being an above-ground hero like All Might. No one said he couldn't save people with a smile and make people feel safe at night. This was the origin of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and how his life took a sad twist. Yet he refused to let it stop him or hold him back. Lost of a loving father and the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 of horrible news in regards to his quirk. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had learned at a young age the harsh truth that the world isn't fair nor is it easy to survive in. Izuku knew his life as a quirkless person was going to be rough, and he saw that with the past few years since he was told he was quirkless, but what he didn't know was that his life will have its ups and downs. Fortune and misfortune. He will meet people that he would become very close to and lose those very same people. Everything must be taken in stride though, since it's the journey of life, and how we overcome those challenges that fate has thrown us is how the final outcome in our life is decided. This is the story of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 who would take on a hero name given to him through the BLD of his friends. This is the story of Fulcrum, the hero of courage who refuses to back down from the challenges that life has thrown at him and has kept getting back up when he was knocked down to the front. Third POV. Many years have gone by since that day with the bully in the hallway. Even though they have grown older and have made it to their last year of middle school, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 still gets bullied constantly and teachers still ignore it or even encourage it. However, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 is closing in on graduation from middle school and he would need to decide what to do with his life. His mother had discovered his plans to train to be a quirkless hero and she just accepted it. She knew his determination was far too strong. She told 𝗧𝗑𝗧 one day when they talked about it that, "You inherited your father's determination to not give up until the last breath. It was how he got me to marry him after pestering me for years to date him. He would keep coming up with new ideas like flowers or random notes as we grew up through the middle school. I finally broke down and agreed to a date and years later there you came. I hate the fact that you want to be a hero since I don't want to lose you. I love you and I don't want to lose you, but I also know that if your father was here he would be saying the opposite of what I would be doing and encouraging it. I have to take his views into consideration and understand that you will leave my home one day. I need to accept that you must live your life as you want to even if I might hate something of it." Inko said as 𝗧𝗑𝗧 just hugged her and thanked her for supporting him even though it hurt her. That is how they converted 𝗧𝗑𝗧's father's office into a small gym since it was just collecting dust. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had submitted his paper declaring that he was going to try for UA near the end of the year. They still had a year left of middle school and then the entire summer break before the exam would start. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 knew he would need to figure out a workout plan to better help him train. However, his thoughts were cut off. One of the bullies had just poured milk onto 𝗧𝗑𝗧's head. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was so glad the end of the day was here and he could go home. After stopping at the bathroom to clean some of the milk off, he left home and decided to take a long way home to just relax. That was how he found himself at 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, kneeling on the ground of a roof after having his dream crushed. But, why all might? 𝗧𝗑𝗧 thought as he picked himself up. Cheeks stained and soaked with the tears he had shed after talking to All Might, he could feel sobs wanting to break through the surface and make him start crying again, but 𝗧𝗑𝗧 refused to stay down. He hasn't gone all of these years to stop now just because of All Might. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 grabbed his bright yellow backpack and started to walk down the staircase. His body that usually felt light due to all the training he has done to be physically fitter than in the past now felt heavy as he felt his muscles move as he went down each step. It felt like he was walking down the stairs and going into hell where he would find reality being the actual hell. Now someone might wonder why 𝗧𝗑𝗧 is feeling like this and why he was saying All Might's name. Well, he had an incident on his way from school. Since he decided to take the long path home, he had run into a villain. This villain was a villain made of sludge. The villain was escaping from a hero which turned out to be All Might. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had gotten attacked but kept his distance until All Might had shown up and defeated the villain. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 saw All Might and wanted to ask the question, so when All Might had jumped away, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had grabbed onto him, and that is how he found himself on the roof where he was only 10 minutes ago. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 felt numb after talking to All Might. Sure, he refused to give up, but when the #1 hero says what he said, then it does hurt far more than anyone else's opinion. As 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stood on the roof with a cold breeze going through the air, he had asked All Might a question after the hero stopped reprimanding him for his action. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had asked him about quirkless people and if they could ever be a hero. "I am quirkless and I want to be a hero. I know I can't be a top hero like you, but I just want to save people and make them feel safe when I arrive. Do you think it's possible?" 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had asked. The cold air felt bone-chilling when All Might spoke. The words All Might stated echoed into 𝗧𝗑𝗧's ears. The world of heroics is a dangerous place. As such, it is the job of the pros who must be willing to risk it all, day in and day out, to save people and defeat the villains. Trust me when I say even top heroes get injured in the line of duty. As such, without a quirk, I should think not. All Might stated. He then started again on his words as he had a sad smile. Heroes could very easily die the moment they leave their homes and their outfits, or even worse, be captured and tortured for endless days due to them being a hero. Without a quirk, this job would become far more dangerous than it already is. As such, I cannot tell you yes that you can be a hero even though you are quirkless. It wouldn't be possible to deal with the villains or natural disaster that would come your way. All Might stated as he was getting ready to job away. Then he said one more statement that hit Izuku the hardest of it all. If you wish to save people and protect others, then be a police officer or a medic. Sure, they get a lot of heat since they're pro heroes, but it's still important and far more realistic for someone like you. Stated All Might as he jumps away, leaving Izuku there on the roof. It hurt Izuku so much. He was used to people telling him no, but to hear it from All Might was harder, but that wasn't what hurt the most. It was the last portion for someone like 𝗧𝗵𝗃 that hurt far more than everything else. Izuku honestly used All Might's smile to keep him going every day, and now his smile had less of a shine to Izuku. Izuku finally made it down the steps and was walking home. He knew he was going to take a while longer, so he texted his mother that he would be later since he decided to take a long way home. After about 5 minutes of walking, he received a message from his mother warning him to be careful and that she loved him. Izuku's heart and body felt a bit lighter at that. Leave it to my mother to make my day better, Izuku thought. With that text message, the tears that had fallen from Izuku's face again had slowed down and come to a stop. Izuku lifted his head higher and kept pushing forward. Though it seemed fate had it out for Izuku today and needed another event to happen. As Izuku was walking home, he found police barricades and a lot of people watching a fight. There were several heroes standing by doing nothing as they watched another hero fight a villain who was a natural counter for them. The hero had a static quirk that allowed them to shock people and numb them enough that they couldn't move quickly. However, the villain's quirk allowed them to turn themselves into a RBB texture that allowed them to stretch but also counter the hero's quirk. The villain was also using a weapon when the hero had nothing. The other heroes on the site were just yelling words of encouragement, and Izuku found this annoying when they should get involved and help her. One hero standing around was 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏. 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 had a strength-increasing quirk that allowed him to lift things that most people couldn't do. However, he was no All Might's strength. This hero and a few others could be helping the other hero instead of standing around. The fight kept going on for a while, and Izuku just kept analyzing the situation as he stood there. A small part of his mind wondered why he was doing it, since even the number one said he couldn't be a hero, but the rest of him refused to admit it. He was going to be a hero one day, and analyzing fighting styles and how people move around in a fight are important for him when he becomes a hero. However, as the fight kept going on, Izuku noticed that the hero was in danger. The hero suffered many wounds that limited their movement, and it was in that moment that everything changed with the world. Izuku saw the women's muscles clench up in protest due to being overworked with her wounds, and then their leg gave out. The female hero fell to the group, and the villain was going to take the chance to end the hero's life. Izuku saw that the hero was in danger, and for some reason he moved without him knowing when or how. His body just started to run. As the blade was coming down, her eyes widened as the blade got closer and closer, and then she closed them tightly, fearing that it would be the end. However, the blade never made contact with the female hero. It didn't hit. Instead, a backpack had come flying and had knocked the blade out of the villain's hand, which distracted him. Everyone was stunned because when they looked where the backpack came from, they saw a middle school student. They paled when they realized the villain started towards him. The female hero tried to get up since the boy had just saved her life when the other heroes didn't even get involved in her annoyance. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't listen to her. Then, as the villain raised his hand to throw a punch backed by his quirk, they heard the laugh of a hero. The laugh of All Might as he jumped down and grabbed the villain. Since the villain didn't have any weapons, the man couldn't fight back, especially against someone who had far more strength to restrain him. His quirk only let him turn into a RBB texture and stretch. Even 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 could have defeated this villain easily if he had gotten involved. A police officer had detained the villain as 𝗳𝗏𝗄𝗏 was just reprimanding Izuku for getting involved. Izuku just snapped. Where were you then? It was clear she was having trouble, yet you and the other heroes just stood there doing nothing. It's your job to save people, and yet you stood there. So before you start chewing me out, you should reconsider what it means to be a hero, since you clearly don't know what it means. It means to save people even when hope might be lost. It means to keep pushing forward when all the odds are against you, Izuku said, and walked away, ignoring the heroes calling him to come back. Izuku didn't want to deal with them, so he just quickly made his way through some alleys and lost them since he was used to his hometown. He needed to know how to escape his bullies quite well over the years, so it was hard for anyone to follow him unless they could fly above him. Though it seems one hero in particular could jump really high and follow him that way. That hero was none other than All Might himself. "Young man, wait," stated a voice behind Izuku. Izuku heard the call and turned around and saw the man. It was a man that looked skeleton-like with his thinner build and sharper facial features that he held. He was very tall though and had blonde hair. Izuku felt like he has seen this man before but couldn't place him. The man asked Izuku if they could talk. Izuku wanted to say no but felt like he needed to, or else something wouldn't happen that should happen. Izuku said sure, and then the man started to talk. The man then powered up and there stood All Might. Izuku was freaking out that the skeleton-like man had just turned into All Might. Izuku was about to scream imposter, but All Might beat him to it. "I'm not an imposter if you are wondering," he said as he dropped down to his skinny form again. All Might then provided proof. He talked about the roof and what was said about it. "I'm here to offer an apology. I shouldn't have said that. Also, I have a question. During the last villain attack, what was going on in your mind when you did that?" he asked. Izuku explained how he just dangerously put himself in danger and he didn't even know why since his body moved without him telling it to. Izuku noticed a big smile on All Might's face at this statement and Izuku was wondering why. All Might then talked about his injury that he showed Izuku the wound and described how he got it and when he got it. "It was 3 years ago when I received this wound. I had a large fight with a villain and they did it to me," he stated, and Izuku was shocked. "None of the known villains you fought or any that are known should be strong enough to do that to you," Izuku stated. All Might agreed and explained that it was a fight that was hidden from the world and the villain is an old one that he had killed in the fight, so there was no need to worry anymore. All Might then talked a bit more. "What I said on that roof, I was wrong. Most heroes that are true heroes in this world had a moment where you did and their body just moved on its own. I've been looking for someone like that, and young man, I need to make a correction. You can be a hero. I think if you had enough proper training it's possible to be a quirkless hero, but I have an offer that would make that impossible for you. I want you to inherit my quirk and become my successor," All Might stated. Izuku froze at what he just heard. Izuku then asked what he meant. All Might smirked again as tears were coming down Izuku's face. All Might had just told Izuku he could be a hero even quirkless. He also said he could gain a damn quirk. All Might started to speak. "My quirk can be passed on from one user to the next. I want you to become my heir and let me train you as my successor," he said. Izuku had many questions about a transferable quirk and how that should be impossible, but All Might knocked him out of his thoughts. "Young Midoriya, please come back down to earth. The choice is yours to accept or decline. I won't force this on you," All Might stated. Izuku just stopped overthinking it and responded that he would do it. "Yes, I'll do it. I always wanted to be a hero even if I was quirkless. My goal was to save people and make them feel safe. If this will help me do a better job at it, then yes," Izuku said, and All Might just laughed and patted him on the head. "Good. Now that we have an agreement, we need to train you to be ready to hold OFA. As such, meet me at the Dagoba beach at 5 am tomorrow, okay?" All Might stated, and Izuku agreed with it. All Might gave Izuku his contact details so they could reach each other, and they split apart for the day. Izuku then headed home and felt so much lighter and happier than he has ever been. This was the start of grueling training for Izuku though. Izuku would be sore almost every single day during this training, and in the end, he wouldn't regret it. "One step closer to my dream of being a hero, and I now have a major supporter as well," Izuku thought as he entered his home and started to do his normal routine of working out in the home gym before going to sleep. He set his alarm for 4 a.m. and went to bed quickly after eating dinner with his mother. Izuku couldn't wait for the next day to come. Third POV. Izuku wasn't 100% sure what to expect when he went to meet All Might at the beach, but he honestly wasn't expecting to be picked up and thrown down onto the beach in the middle of all of the trash. "Start picking up the trash and cleaning. It's time to get you ready for one for all," All Might stated. Izuku asked what he meant. "You said I was worthy to be your successor, so I'm taking this isn't related to that but my body instead," Izuku said as he took his shirt off to ensure it didn't get soaked in sweat. All Might started to say yes when he realized that Izuku was not the stick noodle he had thought he was. But it seems you aren't the stick noodle I thought you were. You might be able to hold OFA currently, but I don't want to risk it. We have 1.5 years to get you ready for the UA exams. One for all is a quirk that grows stronger each time it's passed. Meaning it will be stronger than I currently wield. The more muscles you have, the better percentage control you can have over one for all. As such, let us set a goal of you cleaning this entire beach in 10 months. This will give us 5 months of quirk training before you attempt the exam. All Might stated. Izuku nodded his head at that explanation and got to work. To be fair, it was hard. Not really on cleaning, but the smell of the beach was hard to withstand. It's been sitting here for years. His mother looked at him like he was crazy for telling her that he would start doing training at this beach. She just slowly nodded her head and gave him a questioning look. Izuku had to hold a laugh at his mother's facial expression when he saw her questioning look. He didn't need her digging into this currently. Izuku was working day in and day out on the beach. One weekend when Izuku was pulling a fridge, he felt a lot more weight behind him. He turned around and there his trainer was sitting on it with his roughly 600 pounds of extra weight. I'm only like 550 in this form nowadays. All Might complained. Also, why am I hauling trash again instead of doing a workout in a gym? Izuku asked. All Might then explained that back in the before years when he was younger, the heroes were more about community service and being true heroes. Sadly, a lot of heroes are in it just for money instead of saving people or giving back. All Might said with a sad smile. Izuku understood this and got back to work. It was indeed a good thing to give back to the community. He also understood that if he didn't clean the beach, then who would, since it has been here for years? All Might also said another thing as Izuku pulled the fridge. I also wish to see the beach cleaned again, since this beach my 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗟 and I came to a lot. All Might said in a low tone, and Izuku didn't question it. Based on the tone, he wouldn't answer likely. Izuku rubbed his hands and gripped the rope and pulled the fridge with an All Might on top of it, and slowly but surely made his way across the beach with a lot of trouble. You know, it would be easier if you weren't on it. Izuku groaned out, and All Might countered that it wouldn't be training if it was easy. This training kept going on for the next many months. All Might at one point had to return to the agency so he could prepare things to have a more constant presence in this town, since Izuku would be here training and going to UA. All Might wouldn't stay all the time, but he wanted to be here as much as he could during the training until Izuku started at UA, and then he could figure what to do next after that. It was the 8th month of the beach cleanup. All Might was currently on his return trip to the city to check in on Izuku. He didn't plan to be gone the entire damn month, but things happened. He remembered how one month he found Izuku pushing so hard that he collapsed one day during training. The boy is doing so well, but sometimes he just pushes far too much. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 Yagi aka All Might thought. He was kind of worried at the state he would find his protege in when he returned, since he knew his boy would push himself when he wasn't around. As such, as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 was driving up towards the beach near the end of Izuku's morning training time, he noticed something. I don't smell trash. Nor do I see trash, he thought as he pulled up. The beach was clean. The beach was fully clean except one spot. He saw his protege there sleeping on the beach. Dear God, my boy. You are 2 months ahead of schedule. This provides 7 months of quirk training time that we can do now instead of just 5 months. All Might was really happy with the state of the beach. All Might had taken Izuku home and laid him on his bed. Izuku had introduced Inko to 𝗧𝗵𝗃 so that they would know of each other before something ever happened. As such, it wasn't unnormal to find 𝗧𝗵𝗃 dropping Izuku off, since Inko knew he was training Izuku. She asked if he pushed it again, and he said yes, and that he is almost done cleaning the beach and would likely be finished in the next couple of days or weeks max. Inko still doesn't know about one for all though. All Might and Izuku had a few conversations about it, and it was at a stalemate currently. Izuku wanted to tell her, but All Might was hesitant due to fear of Izuku's mother being in danger. The final week of cleaning had come to pass, and Izuku was now done cleaning it all up. Izuku was so proud of himself for what he has accomplished, and he looked over the beach when he heard his 𝗵𝗃𝗃 arrive. Good job, Izuku, you have really cleaned this beach, and it is right at the 8th month mark as well, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 stated. They sat there on the beach just looking at the sunrise in the early morning. It was so amazing. All Might had shown Izuku a few pictures of the before and after the body of Izuku's, and he could really tell the difference between the two. Izuku was more muscular than he was, but he still focused more on speed and agility with stamina than overall strength. He wasn't really the same build as All Might anyway, so it would take years to get to that type of body build. Now it's time for the transfer of One for All. This power has passed through 7 people before me, starting with the first wielder during the dawn of quirks, and now will land in your hands the 9th user. Are you ready? All Might stated. Izuku then stopped him. I'm sorry. I can't accept this without telling my mother. All Might. Izuku sat with his head bowed. All Might's eyes widened real quickly. All Might. My mother has supported me all these years, and she hates the fact that I want to be a hero quirkless. Do you honestly think she won't connect the dots later on when I appear with a quirk out of random, and then you lose your quirk and your skinny form are revealed, which turns out to be the same man that trained her son before his so-called quirk appeared? She isn't that dumb not to connect the dots. I can't accept if you won't let me tell her. I'm sorry. You say the quirk will be mine, but you also prevent me from telling her. I know it will be hard to tell her and not reveal your form, but that is the point I'm at. I'm sorry for disappointing you and not being able to become your successor. All Might. Izuku said as he bowed his head again with tears coming down his face. All Might was frozen. He had a successor, and the only thing stopping the ceremony was that one point. Telling his mother. All Might thought for a few moments and gave in. Izuku was his successor, and it was also his right to tell who he wanted to. All Might himself did tell other people as well, so it would be unfair of him to restrict the boy, he thought. But we can tell your mother. We'll also tell her about my form, or else she might think you are crazy. All Might stated. Izuku's head shot up in surprise, and he just hugged All Might and thanked him. That is how they all found themselves at a dinner table that afternoon eating when Toshinori brought the subject up. Inko, we need to have a talk about Izuku, he said, and she looked confused and concerned. As you know, he plans to be a hero, and I've been training him to physical build up for that result. What you didn't know is that we had another hidden motivate for that. Izuku won't be a quirkless hero, instead he will use a quirk, he said, and Inko just looked confused. He doesn't have a quirk though, she asked, and then looked at her son. He doesn't at this second, but a part of the deal was us telling you, or else he was going to reject the ceremony to pass my quirk to him, he said as he buffed up. She was shocked as she saw All Might at her table. He dropped down in his skinny form and coughed a bit of blood up. She got worried and handed him a napkin and asked if he was okay. I'm fine, it's due to my wounds, he said. They then explained everything from how they met to the truth of the quirk. Inko was silent for a few moments. I'm kind of glad, honestly. I'm always been scared of you being a hero, and I've been far more scared of you being a quirkless hero since the larger disadvantage you would have. I'm okay with this. I'm glad you were willing to have trust in me, so thank you, Izuku, for telling me about this. I indeed would have been a bit sad if I figured it out later myself, Inko said as she calmed down from all of her emotions. She then looked at All Might and told him to look after her son. He promised that he would. As such, it was time to transfer the quirk. From where we stopped on the beach. Eat this, he said as he pulled a hair and put it in front of Izuku. Both Midoriyas looked at him like he was an idiot. It's passed via DNA, so unless you want to drink blood or salvia, this is the best way, All Might explained as he said One for All couldn't transfer without the current user approving of it. Izuku just grabbed some water and drunk it all with the hair while gagging. Inko just laughed at her son since All Might was just chanting, eat, eat, while Izuku was eating the hair. Toshinori, who all knows about One for All currently? Inko asked. All Might explained everyone that knew. Currently, us 3, Principal Nizu of Yue, Recovery Girl of Yue, my former sidekick though we don't talk anymore due to a disagreement, a detective who I'm good friends with, and then my old mentor who trained me after the passing of my 𝗵𝗃. The mentor was also good friends with Maya and knew about One for All from her, so if Izuku meets him then he will have met 3 holders of One for All himself. All Might stated. Soon they fell into some other conversations since the quirk would take a day to work itself into Izuku's body. 2 days later they found themselves on the beach. It was time to train. All Might showed Izuku a punch and explained that he should clench his butt cheeks and yell smash. That didn't work too well when 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 did that and he broke his arm after releasing the blast. All Might grabbed 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 and told him to hang on and that they would arrive at Recovery Girl soon. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 was waiting for them already in the nurse's office. I don't want to know how you knew, All Might said as he placed 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 done and Recovery Girl healed him. Why are you bringing random people into my office? She asked and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 just said 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 was number. She realized what that meant in seconds. What did you do to him? She asked as she hit him with the cane which hurt in his now skinny form. I didn't do anything. One for all is far stronger than I thought it would be. He threw a punch at 100% and this was the result. All Might stated. Recovery Girl just hit him again and said of course it would be like this. All Might could only accept the hits. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 then woke up and saw the others. You're Recovery Girl and Principal 𝗧𝗧𝗏, the smartest person on earth. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said. 𝗧𝗧𝗏 had a smile at that comment. Now no buttering me up. Won't help you with the exam. Now I suggest you all figure a way to regular OFA quickly. There are only 7 months before the UA exam starts and if he can't pass the exam he won't get into the hero course. 𝗧𝗧𝗏 said. I didn't do an x-ray but I can tell you right here and now. He can't do this anymore. If he throws punches like that a few more times he is done. He won't have a hero career at all since his arms will have to be removed due to damage. Do you two understand? This has to stop right here and right now. Take him to a quirk counselor or get 𝗳𝗏𝗃 involved since he is way better at teaching than you are. Recovery Girl shouted. Then she made a comment that made them both cough. Also, when you find a successor you don't pick a miniature version of you. He's reckless just like you, goddammit. I can already feel the new white hair I will have when he enters UA. Now get out. She said as she pushed them out the door and locked it. He's not a miniature version of me. He's a fanboy with a heart of gold and a far overactive mind than mine with a crazy analytical ability. Nothing alike. He yelled as they got pushed out. Though he heard the comment from inside. A mix between 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 and you. Just what the world needs. Recovery Girl said from the other side of the door. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 just chucked and then they all remembered he was still here. All Might cursed in English. He had no plans on letting 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 get his hands on 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 anytime soon. You know you guys should be careful with your arguments about OFA. This is a school and you're lucky that this is a weekend with no students here. Now, I'm sure you will figure this issue out soon, 𝗧𝗏𝗃, or you will be out a successor. Now I must be off to do work. It was a pleasure meeting you, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏, and she looks forward to the chance of teaching All Might's successor. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said as he walked away. All Might took 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 home for the day and wanted 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 to rest. He told 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 that he needed to do some information digging on good ways to do quirk training since he didn't have this problem due to OFA being weaker when he got it. As such, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 went to sleep that night with a sore body and a tired body due to the bone breaks and healing. He really wanted to get this down already and couldn't wait to see what All Might would come up with his research. All Might, on the other hand, was in his little apartment that he bought nearby to live in when he was in town. He sat down with a computer in front of him and was looking into quirk counselors' training methods. They talked about sensing the quirk inside of the person and feeling what the body could handle. They also talked about if the quirk was centralized to one body part or the entire body and that it matters for control of quirks. One page said that if a quirk that is meant to be used on the entire body was used on one part it could lead to damage to the body that wasn't meant to be. All Might looked into this article more and realized his own quirk control. I'm automatically using it across my entire body. However, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 might be only doing it one part. We'll have to test it later once I'm done with research. All Might thought. He then decided to call his mentor. Hello, sir. It's been a few years. He said into the phone. All Might just spent a few hours talking to his old mentor and was getting ideas on how to do quirk training. His mentor asked why he was asking and he told the truth. I found the 9th and passed the quirk. He was quirkless like me, so quirk control is a problem. I'm researching right now since the first attempt left him with a broken arm that caused too much damage. I found some information I will test with him later but wanted your views, which you've confirmed most of this information. All Might said. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 said to inform him when the kid had decent control and could use the power freely so he could help train him before UA. He didn't trust All Might to do everything by himself, and if he didn't get control down in the first month, to call him so he could come help sooner. The call came to an end and All Might had the information he needed for the training during the week. Third POV. Izuku found himself on the beach after school and found All Might there waiting for him. "Oh my boy. I've done some research last night and called my mentor for advice. I think I got a good grasp on how to get you some control of the quirk," Toshinori stated. He told Izuku to go sit down on the beach and just meditate for a bit. After about 5 minutes he started to talk again. "Keep your eyes close and your mind clear. I want you to create a mental image of what you think the power of OFA looks like. For me and my 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗏, we thought of it as a burning flame like an Olympian torch. Clear your mind and allow your mind to make a shape for OFA and tell me what you see once it becomes clear for you," Toshinori stated as he sat in front of Izuku in his skinny form. Izuku sat there for a few minutes and then started to talk. "It feels like a blazing sun that is hot and burning," Izuku spoke. All Might thought for a few moments and that sounded like a very good description to use in reference to OFA itself. "I want you to just feel it. Don't pull it into your body, just let your mind feel it," All Might said, and a few moments later he talked again. "I want you to imagine that you can pull some energy away from the sun. OFA is an energy quirk of raw power. You need to be careful of how much energy you pull away from the sun into your body. If you pull too much you will harm yourself like yesterday," All Might said. Izuku didn't know how to pull the energy. "How do I pull it?" he asked. All Might explained how OFA felt as it entered his entire body and explained that he didn't localize it in one portion. "When you see me buff up, am I buffing up one part of my body or my entire body with OFA?" he asked, and Izuku got an idea and figured out the problem he had done with One for All. He envisioned energy coming off as solar flares and going into his body. Soon Izuku felt power go across his entire body and it felt like it was burning. All Might could see the green lighting arcing around Izuku's entire body, but he could also tell Izuku was in pain. "But you got the spreading out problem figured out now, it's the percentage control. You said you are envisioning the energy as solar flares. Try imaging the solar flare that comes off to fuel you as a smaller solar flare instead," All Might stated. After about 10 more minutes Izuku opened his eyes and All Might could tell that Izuku had gained basic control of OFA at that moment. Izuku started to get happy and move around, then the energy increased and he was in pain. He cut the quirk off before it could do damage. "But you have gotten a baseline. However, currently, the problem is to maintain it when you lose focuses. So here is the goal for the next month or so. Whenever you have the chance you need to activate OFA and just have it at the baseline that your body can handle going into your body and just try moving around and doing other things. The key is for you to get the feeling down that you don't have to ever think of activating it and setting it to the limit you want. It needs to become a bare instinct for you. Understand?" he asked Izuku, who agreed. They called it a day for training and went to the house to eat since Inko invited him over. Izuku showed her the quirk and she was so happy. They talked about the first failure and she freaked, but talked about how they figured out future training and gotten a baseline that Izuku needs to get used to. They figured out that the current baseline was 5%. Izuku felt down at that, but All Might reminded him that his quirk was far stronger and he was still getting used to it. "As time passes your control will increase. Right now we need you to be able to turn it on and off without problems before we get to the next stages," All Might stated, and Izuku agreed. Several weeks have gone by and Izuku was the highest in the spirit that he could have been in a long time. He thinks he is as happy as he was when he was introduced to Kaken Bakugo Katsuki when he was born. The little fellow does have an attitude and everything, but Izuku made sure to correct his behavior when he learned what the teachers were teaching him in his old schools. He was teaching Bakugo that it was okay to put others down. They were turning him into a bully. Izuku quickly fixed that one day when he dragged Kaken to his parents and told them everything he learned. Kaken wasn't happy that Izuku told on him, and then Izuku asked for the room. "Kaken, you say you want to be a hero, but does All Might do what those teachers are encouraging you to do? They are trying to teach you that it's right to harm people like me or those that are perceived as weaker. Would you be okay with someone harming me for no reason except that I don't have a quirk?" Izuku asked. Little Kakin said no with a tear in his eye at the thought of his big brother being harmed. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 then got his aunt and uncle back in there and then talked to Kakin. You aren't in trouble. You just need to unlearn what behaviors they were trying to teach you. Auntie and uncle will deal with the teachers, but if you ever have a question of is something right or wrong, then think this. Would All Might do it? If you can answer yes without hesitance, then it's probably okay, but if you can't, then ask us, okay? Even if you think yes and you still have a question, then ask us. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said as he hugged his little brother figure. It was one of the rarest moments that 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 felt true hatred for someone that they were trying to corrupt his little brother figure. Back to the quirk. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 had even shown it to the Bakugos and gave a half-true story about having to do a large amount of physical work to have it activated. They freaked out when he said what happened the first time he used it. Though they were happy that he got advice on how to control it. They were glad he got it late than never, since he wanted to be a hero. They always supported him but were afraid, just like his mother was. Soon though the month came to a close. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 had spent the entire month turning his quirk on and off in his room or out on the beach. He would do many things in the house with the quirk if he could. At the start, it was nearly impossible to move with the quirk on, but near the end, he has gotten to that point that he can turn it on with just a single thought and move around freely. It only takes a few seconds to come to life. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 avoided increasing power at all. He focused on getting his body used to the 5% limit without any trouble. He was also scared of the end result, since All Might told him that OFA should be about 20% stronger than his. So 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏's 80% should be All Might's 100%, which was a scary thought, since that is 100% in his prime, where he could easily change weather patterns if he did punches correctly, which 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 would learn later on. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 didn't want to destroy the house. As the month had come to an end, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 met All Might in a different location, since the beach had been gaining users more since it was cleaned and people noticed. Businesses in that area were starting to see an increase in foot traffic as well, due to people coming back to the area, and people were talking about it in the news, which made 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 embarrassed. See, my boy, this is what I mean by helping the community. You cleaned the beach, but you also made an impact on local business in that area due to the increased foot traffic. This is what it means to be a true hero. To help even when they don't realize it was you. All Might stated. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 was proud of himself for his impact. He didn't care about the recognition either. He just felt good with himself. Soon 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 found himself in an old warehouse. Welcome to your new training grounds. It's empty currently, but from now on we will meet here to train. The reason we don't use a normal gym is 1, they can't handle OFA, and 2, my form. We will need to do some training that I will transform for, and we can't do that in a public area. All Might said. The warehouse was very long and tall. All Might explained that he bought it near the start of the month and had a company come clean it out and lay a new floor and rewire lights inside. This was so it would be safe for them to train in and not step on old nails or something. I will have the building supplied with everything we need, from gym equipment to a small living area built in, so we can stay a few nights if we need to for some reason. This gym is located halfway between your house and UA to be better for the future. It's a bit of a path outside of your current school though. All Might stated. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 just thanked him for it and they got to basic training. All Might asked what progress 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 made and he showed him. I'm able to move freely at 5% and can turn it on within a second of willing its activation. I haven't tried running or anything else in this state yet though. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 said. Good job. Now do 5 laps around the room of this building and let's see if you can maintain it during that time. All Might stated. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 got to running around the building. After about 3 minutes, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 came back to the start and finished. He was able to maintain control while running around the inside of the room. Good, and you can easily see the difference in your time, since this size with your normal speed would be about 10 minutes of running, instead you did 3. All Might stated. They then started to think out a plan. They would start doing light spars to get 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 a fighting form going. This spar would be done quirkless and with his quirk. They would also spend a few days of the week working on increasing his control to a higher percentage to find his current limits. When the equipment arrives, they would change the schedule up to fit a new training plan. As such, they got to spar practice. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 powered up at 5% and All Might grew. So do we go on a countdown or? 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 asked, and All Might just swiped his hand at 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏's head. No countdowns in hero work. Never assume there is one. All Might stated. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just dodged the best he could and went tumbling several times. He did not enjoy getting a smack from All Might that sent him across the room. This training kept going for 2 more weeks until they took a break when the construction crew came to build the living area and install all of the equipment that All Might ordered. It was weights, obstacle setups, large tires, and many other things that 𝗧𝗂𝗧 didn't know of. 1 week later came quickly and 𝗧𝗂𝗧 found himself back at the warehouse, but he found an older male there now. "Hello, sir. Are you in the wrong place since this is a private building?" 𝗧𝗂𝗧 asked, and the man just powered his quirk up and attacked. "Don't get close to an unknown threat or they might kill you easily, brat. Now power up OFA and start fighting back and let's see how you do," the old man said. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just powered up to 6% that he had and started dodging and attempting to counterattack. "Your moves are too noobish and you are telegraphing them all. You are mirroring your mentor too much. Stop being chained by him and get moving, brat," he yelled. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 didn't know what he meant by mirroring his mentor too much. He's just trying to throw punches and hit the old man. Then 𝗧𝗂𝗧 jumped up after the man when he went into the air out of his reach and started to bounce around to follow him. He noticed he was moving faster than he thought possible. The old man kept yelling different things throughout the fight. Some were that real fights don't have perfect moments and natural dictators never do, since 𝗧𝗂𝗧 tried to wait and attack, but 𝗳𝗃𝗃 made that hell by the bruises that were forming. After about 40 minutes of 𝗧𝗂𝗧 getting kicked around, a clapping sound could be heard. It was All Might in his skinny form. "So how do you think he did, 𝗳𝗃𝗃?" All Might asked. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was shocked since that was the name of one of the secret holders. "The brat is stiff like you said he was. He is also taking after you too much in his movements. He did start to adapt near the end, which was good. I also noticed he moved faster than before, so he has more ability to use OFA in his legs than arms. I think it's due to the fact that he's built as a speed type instead of an overall hitter," 𝗳𝗃𝗃 stated. All Might thanked him and agreed with his estimate. "That's what I thought as well on his build type. He reminds me of a mix between us. He has my strength due to OFA, but he seems better at speeding around and using the speed to add to his attacks than just outright punching," All Might said, and that got 𝗧𝗂𝗧 thinking. He did feel faster and felt like his blows did have a bit more strength behind them when he attacked. He decided to move around the place for a bit. He powered up OFA with the focuses on him, using speed to his advantage, and then he bounced off. He felt the difference. He was using 6% before when he was trying to attack while just standing around, but now it felt like he was using 10% to move around. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 then started to attack the quirk-resistant dummies and moved around by jumping off the ground and walls. He would land a blow and back off and then kept doing that until he found himself going into a rhythm. Soon though he blasted one of the dummies off its support and broke it. He then heard clapping from behind him. Sorry. I had an idea after you guys were talking about speed type. I noticed when I was moving I felt powerful, and just now I realized I was able to use 10%. It feels like the power is more focused on my lower half with less in my upper half," 𝗧𝗂𝗧 explained. 𝗳𝗃𝗃 thought for a few moments before speaking. "That sounds about right. The 7th was a bit more of a speed type, and she had a quirk though." She explained the feeling like the energy centered around her quirk and gave it a boost while powering her other body parts, but felt a difference in her legs compared to her arms. "You are similar in that you are a speed attacker rather than a brute force like 𝗧𝗵𝗃 here," 𝗳𝗃𝗃 stated. They talked a bit more, and it was decided that 𝗳𝗃𝗃 would stay at the warehouse moving forward to help train 𝗧𝗂𝗧. "Good thing I had the living area built for multiple people then. I'll have a delivery service drop food off in the early morning on Fridays so the place can be restocked," All Might stated. They then talked about training plans for the remaining months. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 had just graduated at the end of this month and that left the summer break before UA started, so roughly 4-ish months since the exam was 2 months before the school started. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 felt like he was not going to like the remaining 4 months with 𝗳𝗃𝗃. It felt like he was going to be covered in bruises left and right, but he wanted to be as good as he could before the exam. All Might, on the other hand, was fearing for his life. He was glad that 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was getting rid of the stiffness and was telegraphing his punches and attacks less now after the hour to so training with 𝗳𝗃𝗃. All Might was scared of T would happen to him instead of 𝗧𝗂𝗧. Though there was a random thought that said better 𝗧𝗑𝗧 getting beaten by 𝗵𝗃𝗃 instead of him again, as he remembers throwing up during one of their training sessions in his youth. Better 𝗧𝗑𝗧 than me. Sorry my boy. I am so sorry I called him. 𝗬𝗍 said as he left as soon as he could once everything was decided. They would meet up at the start of next week and let everyone relax over the weekend. Third POV. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had arrived at the warehouse and got to warming up and training before 𝗵𝗃𝗃 even showed back up. Gran was always a bit amazed at the dedication that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had been putting into the training over the past few months. He thought as a normal kid he would slack off here and there, but all he saw was some showboating a few times that stopped as time went on. Though he couldn't blame him for having fun since he did it when he could control his quirk when he was young. Though 𝗬𝗍 did make a remark one day that caught Gran's attention. He had mentioned how he kept forgetting that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was only a kid still and would only be turning 15 soon before the exam. 𝗬𝗍 explained that due to 𝗧𝗑𝗧 being quirkless in today's society, he has had to work so much harder and become more mature due to the treatment he received that he acts like a pro hero quite a bit when it comes to training for hero work. It's like a 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 that happens when the training starts. He will start analyzing everything and anyone that he can see. His notebooks are detailed with many different things which make him an overall rounder when it comes to being a hero. 𝗬𝗍 said. Gran had to agree. Strength, speed, agility, and intelligence. He is going to be a monster of a hero when he graduates UA. Look our world here, the 9th use of OFA comes. Thought 𝗵𝗃𝗃 as he put his stuff away and was getting ready. Gran has been spending a few days looking at the notebooks and had given the boy tips on how to improve himself. One was to take the notes and create his own style from everything he has seen and learned. 𝗬𝗍 soon arrived at the warehouse and they got to training. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was getting better at his sparring with and without a quirk. His control of OFA had arrived at 15% over the past 3 months. They only had 1 month left before the exam and wanted to focus on not increasing the percentage of control but overall fighting ability and tactics he deploys. As such, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was fighting both 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and 𝗬𝗍 at the same time, and it hurt his body a lot with the number of times he got smashed or kicked into the building floor. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 even puked up lunch a few times during the week that they started this. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 finally understood why 𝗬𝗍 feared 𝗵𝗃𝗃 so much. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 currently fighting style was a mix of Gran's and 𝗬𝗍's mixed with a few different things. He adapted himself based on his opponent for the most part and didn't keep himself to one set of fighting tricks. He did learn some basic martial arts though to help him in the event his quirk couldn't be used for some reason. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 would focus on quick attacks and then overpowering when their guard was broken or a large opening was present. They also did some different pieces of training where 𝗬𝗍 would move large objects and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 would have to dodge them as 𝗬𝗍 threw them at 𝗧𝗑𝗧, or when 𝗵𝗃𝗃 would try to kick him when he was dodging. They also made 𝗧𝗑𝗧 watch old videos of missions and had him plan out strategies based on information they had present before the mission went off. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was getting better and better at thinking and acting like a pro hero. His physical training also increased and he would keep working no matter if it was cold or hot out. The training never stopped. Soon another half a month had passed and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was currently sitting in his bedroom one night when something weird happened to him. He was floating. They never mentioned something like this happening. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 said as he kept trying to push himself down to his bed. However, he kept floating back up to the ceiling. The problem was that his mother was working late that night and his phone was in his bag where he couldn't reach. CRP. How do I get out of this? 𝗧𝗑𝗧 thought, but his vision went black as he felt himself fall. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 then woke up in a dark void of nothing, but then he felt something behind him. He turned around somehow and saw something. He wasn't in his room anymore, he was in some sort of space and he was floating. It looked like there were stars in the distance but no moon or earth. Just stars everywhere that now lit up the entire void. Then, a few stars turned to different colors. 8 different colors. The spheres were lined up from smallest to biggest. From sliver to a yellow. Then something happened. The stars started to get brighter into it blinded his vision. Then he felt a tap on his shoulder and he turned around quickly. There stood a woman that had black hair and had purple energy around her. Hello. It's been quite a few years since someone could access this level of OFA. You are special. You will meet the first wielder one day, but it's not time yet. For some reason OFA wants you to have my quirk. the woman said, and 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was confused about what was going on. He asked her to slow down, but she said that there was no time since he was going to wake up soon. Just know that I'm the 7th user 𝗳𝗃𝗵𝗲. Ask your emissary for details later, but my quirk was a bit weaker when I had it, but OFA had made it far much stronger. You need to be careful with how you fly, or you might go out to space. Nana said as he placed her head on him, and then she disappeared and he woke up in his bed with his mother shaking him. She asked him if he was alright since he had his quirk going for some reason. Sorry. Something happened to it. I need to talk to 𝗳𝗵𝗃 since it seems the past users leave an echo of themselves in the quirk and his 𝗵𝘃𝗲 just told me some information. He said as he grabbed his phone and called 𝗳𝗵𝗃 to meet him at the warehouse again since it was an emergency. 𝗳𝗵𝗃 couldn't answer before he hanged up and ran to it. The sun was close to setting already, but 𝗧𝗂𝗧 didn't care. He needed to figure out what was going on with everything. Soon he arrived and busted in and found 𝗳𝗏𝗃 and 𝗳𝗵𝗃 waiting. They asked him what was wrong as they saw him out of breath. Who was going to tell me about the past users leaving echoes and talking to me? I just talked to the 7th user. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 yelled as he tried to catch his breath, and 𝗳𝗵𝗃 and 𝗳𝗏 looked like fish out of the water. They then asked for more details and 𝗧𝗂𝗧 explained what happened. Again they looked shell-shocked at learning this new information. They asked him to try and feel for a different quirk, and what do you know, 𝗧𝗂𝗧 found one. He then started to float up to the ceiling, but 𝗳𝗵𝗃 grabbed him before he could float too far. This complicates the training plans. We need to spend the remaining time getting this under control now. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 said. They also talked about why 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was getting a new quirk. And a theory was OFA was compensating due to the fact that 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was limited in the percentage control currently, but that was only their guess. They would have to wait until 𝗧𝗂𝗧 talked to the first wielder, which Nana hinted at. That was the start of a grueling month of training. This training was even rougher than the previous one since they needed to control a new quirk in 1 month's time, which was painful for 𝗧𝗂𝗧. Gran would kick him so much. They found out a trigger for the float quirk was the feeling of wanting to be weightless. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 got that down but was having trouble controlling the direction of the flying portion. He would keep going into other things and smacking his head, which he was glad when they had gotten a helmet for him to wear. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 had hit his head a few times before they bought one, and it wasn't fun. After the grueling training went on for that remaining month, it was time for the UA entrance exam in 1 week. They decided to take a break and let 𝗧𝗂𝗧's body rest. They had made good progress. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 figured out to control float a bit more and is able to maneuver in the air without using air blasts from OFA, but it was slow currently. As such, 𝗧𝗂𝗧 still used the air blast to control his flight until his other method became combat ready. The look Gran gave was one of pain and suffering until they figured it all out. As 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was resting during the week before the UA exam, he thought back on some of the conversations that he has had over the past month since finding out about the origins of One for All. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 had asked for more details about how One for All started since getting new quirks seemed really impossible unless the origins of One for All were special. It wasn't a very good story to learn of. Don't worry, my boy. All for One is dead. The wounds I have are from him, and I crushed his head in that fight. I have no belief that he is alive. If he was, I would face him first before you would anyway. 𝗳𝗵𝗃 stated since he could see the nervous feelings that 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was having about where OFA came from. Then they talked about the objective of One for All. 𝗳𝗵𝗃 explained that the objective was to stop AFO, which he did, and now it's just to keep the world safe since 𝗳𝗵𝗃 would have to retire in roughly 5 years at his current rate of power leaving him. So they should be good since 𝗧𝗂𝗧 will graduate by then anyway and the safety of the public would be ensured. What do we do about the problem of gaining more quirks? We can adjust my registration to account for this, but others that don't fit will be hard to explain away. Also, what happens if his followers are still around and see me as his second coming? 𝗧𝗂𝗧 asked worriedly. This was a fair question. Regarding the quirks, we will have to see as they come. 𝗍𝗓 will be a helpful hand in solving the issue once you're in UA, but we are getting into risky territory about the secret of OFA. No one to my knowledge has shown the signs of more than 2 quirks. We also don't know how many quirks you will get. 𝗳𝗵𝗃 said. They knew there was a chance for 6 more quirks total, but that is assuming each wielder had a quirk since 2 wielders were already quirkless. The problem of the followers of All for One can be more directly handled as they come and get rid of. If you notice anyone following you or acting strange, let us know and we will look into it. 𝗵𝗃 stated. That is really all they could do at this point was wait and see for both the quirk issue and the possible evil followers that lie in waiting around the world. Soon they got to training again after they finished the conversations of how One for All started. Another day that 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 remembered was when 𝗧𝗂𝗧 got his daily beatings from 𝗵𝗃 and he had made a big mistake. This was from when 𝗵 had just really started out in helping train 𝗧𝗂𝗧. 𝗵 had taken some bread and placed them on the side of his head and asked him what he was. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 knew the answer was an idiot sandwich. 𝗵 did this because he made a stupid mistake and had let his guard down during one of the fighting spars. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 decided to open his mouth and be a smart, but that day, it didn't turn out well for him. 𝗵 just kicked 𝗧𝗂𝗧 left and right and made him throw up lunch. Clean it up if you want to be a smartass, 𝗵 said as he walked away. Another memory that 𝗧𝗂𝗧 went through was the fact that he had declined a recommendation from All Might to attend UA as well. I know we might do an internship or something, but I want to wait until my 3rd year if you still have hero time left. I want to grow on my own name before people associate us together. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 said, and All Might was happy to meet this request. He understood 𝗧𝗂𝗧 and his feeling of wanting to branch out before he was associated with All Might, otherwise it would always be about All Might being his 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 and not him being a hero who was a student of All Might. As 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was going through his memories of his training, he could only feel happy with himself since he had come so far with his mentors helping him. As such, he wanted to make them proud and was aiming to score 1st place in the entrance exam if he could do it. He had told them his goals and they encouraged him to try for it. With the combination of OFA and float, it's possible. Just be careful not to break bones. 𝗵𝗃 yelled. 𝗵 was still sad when he learned how All Might had told 𝗧𝗂𝗧 to activate the quirk the first time around, and let us say All Might didn't show up for hero work that day. All Might could barely move from the beating that 𝗵 gave, and 𝗧𝗂𝗧 shuddered at the sight. He himself knew not to PSS 𝗵𝗃 off anymore, or else you will suffer the fate of a beating. 𝗵 doesn't care who it is since he has already wiped the floor with the so-called number 1 in his words. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just patted his 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟's back that day and said sweet nothings into his ear as his 𝗵𝗃𝗧 calmed down from the beating. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 shuddered out of his thoughts of that day. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 decided to just go to sleep and wake up early since the exam was on the next day. As such, 𝗧𝗂𝗧 fell asleep and was ready to take the next day by storm. He was going to start declaring that he was here and ready to support the world. 3rd POV. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 woke up the next day from his dream and got ready for the day. Today was the day of the entrance exam and he was going to take it by storm. He ate breakfast with his mother and wished her goodbye. He received messages of good luck from All Might and 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏 and he thanked them. However, the closer he got to the school, the less and less he felt like he could do this. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 soon started chanting things to himself like that it's fine and everything would be fine. That he had prepared for anything that could happen and that he would do amazing. The chanting didn't do much for him, as the closer he got the worse he became. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 looked like a nervous wreck by the time that he arrived at UA. His hair had gotten messy and he felt like he would throw up any moment now. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was even obsessing over his shoelaces being uneven or how his jacket was leaning to one side too far or another. He was doing anything he could to distract his thoughts. He couldn't find anything else to distract his thoughts and had to go to the registration desk now or else he wouldn't get to sign in. He walked over to the registration table and started the sign-in process. After about 5 minutes he was done and handed a paper that showed him what door to go through and where to go sit when he got in the exam room. The instructions were strict and left no room to argue on going to the restroom. They didn't want anyone running off. If you went off the path from your test room, then you would be failed from the test right off the back. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 noticed quite a few ectoplasm clones hiding around in places waiting for people to try and walk off the designated area. The written exam forced people into different exam rooms from people you went to school with to avoid cheating with friends. As such, 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 didn't have to sit with any of his former classmates, which helped his nerves since he saw a few of them at the school. 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏 waited around 5 minutes in the exam room before a few teachers walked in and started to hand out a test for them to take. The exam had the standard sections of math, reading, English, and other things. It also had a section on analysis that was worth extra points. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 had done the sections quite easily since he always had to self-study due to teachers destroying his work and tanking his grades. As such, he got ahead of his classmates and had already studied first-year material for high schools. This allowed him to go through the basic sections quite easily. The analysis section had them break down quirks and its strength and weakness. They also had to give a battle plan for several missions based on the limited information that was provided. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 took his time in this section since he knew he could likely score all of the extra points if he did them well enough. He spent years doing his book, and this was a spot to put that knowledge to use. As such, he made sure his answers were detailed and straight to the point in areas that would require as such. Soon the test came to an end and everyone handed in their tests. They were dismissed and sent towards the auditorium. Some made a beeline to restrooms or sitting area, but 𝗧𝗂𝗧 went right for the auditorium to get ready and relax before the physical portion of the exam. He wanted to focus on it and only it. He started to read the pamphlet that was provided to them. After about 5 minutes the room started to get filled gradually. After another 5 minutes of waiting the entire room was filled up. Everyone was now sitting and waiting for the exam to start. Everyone around 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just ignored him, which was fine with him. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 came up on the stage and started to talk. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 started to talk about each of the robots and how they were worth a different point value. The 1-pointer, the 2-pointer, and the 3-pointers. He then talked about the last robot, which was worth 0 points and was there to just cause trouble for everyone. The teacher asked if anyone had any questions and no one raised their hands. As such, 𝗵𝘃𝗃 said a few last words before telling everyone to exit the main doors and that there would be buses with their assigned letter waiting to take them to their exam site. After the short bus ride to the exam site, 𝗧𝗂𝗧 found himself before gigantic gates. There were roughly around 200 or so people in the test site with him. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 made his way towards the front and was waiting for the gates to open. He remembered the words of All Might. There is no go in the hero world, nor is there a countdown. He stated during one training. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 knew that UA produced top heroes and would not hold back. As such, even though he wanted to analyze all the quirks around him, he needed to be ready. 𝗵𝘃𝗃 came out of a control room and walked on the wall. He looked at everyone and asked if they were ready. They did respond this time, unlike in the auditorium where they refused to answer. 𝗳𝗿𝗵𝗃 𝗳𝗏𝗃 Mike said. Everyone looked confused to expect one person. About 40 seconds later they all heard a sound from inside and they saw 𝗧𝗂𝗧 destroying robots. Some complained he had an early start and Mike just yelled, "There is no go in the hero world." Everyone started running at those words. It was chaos as 200-odd people tried to get through the gate and get points. Some were shoving each other and yelling. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was already deep inside the exam area getting point after point. He was already at 20 points by the time the other people ran in. He used the float to get a good speed going after he kicked off from the ground. That is how he got deep inside the test site. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 could be seen jumping across the walls of buildings as he sped his way through the city. He was ripping robots' heads off left and right. He grabbed one robot and just tossed it at another, causing them both to blow up. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 used his strengths, speed to generate stronger hitting and kicking force. He used robots to bounce off each of them, but the kicking force from pushing away would rip the robot's head off. As 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was making his way through the exam, he did stop and save a few people, but they yelled at him for getting in their way when it was clear they were being overwhelmed by the robots. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just smiled and jumped away. He used float mainly as a speed booster when he needed to start off, since he would use the buildings as his terrain during fighting instead of just constantly floating around. While all the students were taking the exam, the staff was in the room talking about the exam takers. They didn't see a lot of people that they liked. There was also a tired-looking hobo that was in the exam room who just groaned at the screen. The others heard the groan from the main, which indicated that he was awake now. 𝗧𝗏𝗧, so good of you to wake up. We are in an exam after all, 𝗧𝗏𝗧 said with a fake cheer in his voice at his staff member sleeping during the exam. 𝗧𝗏𝗧 looked around at the screens and groaned. None of them are really good from the looks of it. I see several that have attacked each other, which kicks them out of the exam anyway. He stated. The other staff just agreed with that assessment. They didn't really see anyone that stood out compared to previous years. Only a few good ones this year. The rest are disappointing. 𝗧𝗏𝗧 said with his usual cheer that the staff could tell was fake. 𝗧𝗏 saw a green-hair exam taker that was smiling all of the time, which he found annoying. It reminded him of All Might who smiles non-stop. The principal pointed out a few others that were thrown on the main screen. Give me the main ones you like, and if they survive me then welp good for them, since I'm betting we will get rid of everyone else, 𝗧𝗏 said as he got back into his sleeping bag and just drank coffee he stole from another staff member that yelled at him for it. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said he would, while the other homeroom teacher just complained about the lack of good students in his class. Now back on the field with the exam takers, they all felt the ground start shaking. 𝗧𝗏 looked around and tried to find what was causing the shaking, and then he saw it. When they said it was an obstacle to avoid, I didn't think it meant it was taller than all the damn buildings. That's as tall as the main UA building. 𝗧𝗏 thought as he started to move out of the way. 𝗧𝗏 knew there was only a handful of minutes remaining and he felt like he had enough points for the entire exam. As 𝗧𝗏 was moving away, he saw two people were arguing in the path of the 0-pointer. Are they really doing that here and now? He thought. 𝗧𝗏 changed his path and got to the students. You guys, we need to move now. The robot is coming this way, 𝗧𝗏 stated, and they just ignored him. The robot was getting closer and closer. Screw it, 𝗧𝗏 thought as he powered up OFA and just lifted the two boys onto his shoulders and ran away with them, now yelling at him. 𝗧𝗏 watched as he turned his head and he saw the robot wipe out several blocks of buildings. Dear God, isn't that a bit too much, 𝗧𝗏 thought. 𝗧𝗏 soon arrived at the start area and let the two down that he carried. He also saw that a few people were struggling to escape, so 𝗧𝗏 went back and pulled them out of the destroyed zones. He had helped around 8 people get out of the giant robot's path before the exam was called. 𝗧𝗏 was exhausted from the exam. The 2 exam takers that he had saved the first time had come up to him and yelled at him. Why did you get involved in our matter? They asked him. 𝗧𝗏 just looked confused at this point. You were standing right in front of the 0-pointer's path and were going to get hurt. Why would I just leave you two there? 𝗧𝗏 said. They just said they didn't need help and they would have been fine. 𝗧𝗏 just shook his head since he didn't believe that one bit. He started to walk away and noticed a small line of students, and he saw Recovery Girl at the front of the line. She saw him and looked him up and down and then nodded her head. Guess she thinks I will break my bones again. I only did that once, 𝗧𝗏 thought. 𝗧𝗏 made his way through everyone and headed towards the gate of the mock city. 𝗧𝗏 was happy with his results. He thought he was going to pass easily but was also exhausted. The anxiety did kick in when he arrived at the warehouse. 𝗧𝗏 was going through his thoughts of if saving those students counted as interfering in their exams and would cost him his spot at UA since he felt he had gotten enough points. 𝗧𝗏 was now full-blown panicking. Then he was knocked out of his thoughts when a cane hit him across his back. 𝗧𝗏 said as he turned around and saw 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 standing there. You are panicking and looking like someone told you All Might had become a villain, 𝗳𝗏 said. 𝗧𝗏 didn't find that last part funny. 𝗧𝗏 started to talk about the exam and how everything went. What if I'm docked points for interfering in their exam? I know I saved them, but what if they didn't need help and the teachers remove points from me? 𝗧𝗏 said after he explained everything. 𝗳𝗏 just looked at 𝗧𝗏 and then hit him with his cane. You are really dense when you need to be, 𝗳𝗏 stated. 𝗧𝗏 was confused. 𝗳𝗏 then explained that 𝗧𝗏 was going to be fine and that he wouldn't lose points for what he did. He explained if he had attacked them then yes, he could be disqualified or lose points, but he wouldn't for what he did. 𝗳𝗏 then explained that the exam had another hidden test inside of itself but didn't go into the details of what it was. He did say that saving people was a part of the hidden test and that he would be fine since he had thought at the school for a year. Soon 𝗧𝗏 calmed down enough and they got back to training. They wanted to get float under the best control that they could get it, but also work on one for all itself now. 𝗧𝗏 was currently sitting at 15% and they had a goal of getting that to 25% by the end of the first year since they needed to train 2 quirks instead of just 1. They had set up some taller obstacles that 𝗧𝗏 had to use float and one for all to get around. These obstacles hanged from the ceiling and the goal was to not touch one while moving through them. If 𝗧𝗏 touched one then he had to restart and 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 would make him run around the gym 10 times without a quirk while carrying a bag of weights on his back. It was brutal but also efficient training that drove Izuku to be careful and efficient in his movements, since Gran would constantly increase the number of weights in the bag and Izuku never knew how much was in the bag each time. Izuku currently could get through 25% of the obstacle course without hitting something. The training contained without rest since they only had about 1 month before the school would start up. They wanted to get as much training in while they could. Izuku also used this training as a way to distract his mind from the entrance exam results that he would receive in about a week or so. All Might had texted him and told him not to worry about it, and he likely did amazing. All Might had to return to his agency the day before the exam to do some work but would be back in time for the results. Third POV. We could find all the staff together going over the class rosters a few days after the exam. They were annoyed due to the fact that almost no exam takers had what Aizawa would call potential. Aizawa always found the exam annoying due to it just being a competition of smashing robots. He found it illogical. He was currently flicking through the student files for his class, though he wasn't reading them in detail since he never does that until after having them for a week. That is, if they survive that long, he thought. He noticed that most are not impressive at all, but again it was a competition of smashing robots. Across from Aizawa was Principal Nizu, who was drinking his tea with his usual smile on his face. He was talking to the other staff members. Unfortunately, the batch of exam takers and now students that we are having aren't that impressive compared to the previous years. They all lack a lot and wouldn't turn into good heroes. Nizu stated. Some staff wanted to protest this since it was only a short exam that the students could show off, but Aizawa had cut into that. I believe some of you did the rescue points this year and would be able to agree with Nizu's statement. He stated, and the teachers that did just stopped talking and then nodded their heads. Only a small group of students got rescue points, which was the hidden test to judge people on their basic hero traits. One exam taker did score quite a bit in the rescue points. It was one Izuku Midoriya who had scored the highest in the combat section as well. Midoriya had scored 65 villain points with 50 rescue points due to all the people he had saved, which granted him a total of 115 points total, which was 5 points lower than All Might's score. Aizawa felt like the boy was holding back, and he was going to teach the boy a lesson during the first day on holding back. Kid better have a good damn reason for holding back, or else I'll just get rid of him, Aizawa thought. He listened back to the conversation the other staff was having. They were talking about what to do with the students, since a lot of the students that would pass the exam and be accepted didn't really have any potential. One staff suggested that they shrink the class size from 2 classes and do only 1 instead. Everyone looked at 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who had stated this. Aizawa agreed with him since most didn't have potential. Nizu looked like he was thinking, as some teachers protested this since they would be directly changing the exam results from 40 passing to 20 people passing. Nizu then spoke and said that they were allowed to do it. It's been done before, closer to the start of UA starting, but there is precedent for it. It was used mainly when they would vote on how many people to accept, but it stopped later on when it became normal for all schools to have 2 classes of 20 each since heroics became more and more popular. We can just start doing it again until we no longer need it, Nizu stated. The other heroes like Hound Dog and Midnight stopped protesting since it was done before, so they accepted it. The other homeroom teacher complained since it was decided that all the students that were allowed in would be placed in Aizawa's hands. Nizu did this due to his excelling habits. Everyone knew he did it for that reason. He wants to get rid of anyone that he doesn't approve of, thought everyone at Nizu's actions. They soon started talking a bit more and they voted to approve the decision at the end. It came out with nearly everyone supporting it except the other homeroom teacher that wouldn't get students this year. To be honest, Aizawa hasn't liked the other man since he was far too lax in his teaching. He suspected Nizu was trying to force the man out without directly firing him. All the teachers hoped that some of the students would survive the demon known as Eraserhead and that they would at least have some students to teach for this year's classes, or they all might find too much free time on their hands, which is never good to have with Nizu around. As if sensing their thoughts, Nizu just smirked at them and laughed as he drank his tea. As the decision was made, only 1 class of 20 students would be present this year at UA. Those 2 letters were sent out, which included the 4 recommendation spots that they had to have due to agreements with the board. Though them surviving, Aizawa is not agreed with the board though. 2 weeks after the meeting, the letters had arrived at people's homes. One letter found its way to 𝗵𝗃 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Izuku could hear his mother call for him quickly. Izuku, come here quickly, the letter is here. Come on. Get down here, she said as she was getting happier and happier. Izuku left the home gym and quickly made his way down the steps and almost ran into his mother. He saw the envelope on the kitchen counter. He grabbed it and sat down with his mother in the living room. He slowly opened the envelope up and saw a disc fall out. What? Izuku asked, then the disc came on. Hello. I am 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the heroics teacher at UA High. You placed in the top spot for the practical and scored a total of 115 points. This was 5 points under all mites recorded. Congratulations, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃. You might be wondering where the extra points came from, but they are due to saving people. Heroics is more than just defeating the villain. It's about saving people, and the practical exam had a hidden portion inside of itself. Congratulations. This is your hero academia. The screen blinks out and the device shuts off. Izuku was in shock. He was 5 points away from beating his MSDR's score. Inko snapped out first and then just hugged Izuku and congratulated him. You did it, Izuku. You did it, she said as she cried a bit. After they finished crying together and decided to have some food to celebrate, Izuku decided that he would go to the warehouse. He texted both Grand and All Might that he received his results and was going to head to the warehouse. They texted that they would be there. Gran was always there since he lived there nearly all the time now. Izuku soon arrived and found his mentors waiting for him. I did it. I passed the exam and I took first place, Izuku stated as he rushed inside the building. They congratulated him and asked what score did he get. Izuku explained the score breakdown and All Might made the comment that it was only 5 points under his score. Gran though made the comment that Izuku probably did better on the written test, which All Might just scratched his neck at remembering how horrible he did. Yeah. Not my best moment when I nearly failed the written exam, he stated, and Izuku was shocked at that fact. They talked about many things but also talked about how happy they were that Izuku didn't break his bones. Soon Izuku made his way back to his home and went to sleep. They kept training for the remaining time before the school started, and soon it was upon them. All Might would be spending his days at the agency since Izuku would be in school most of the time but would only be a phone call away. He would show back up at the warehouse at the end of the day to help train on the scheduled days, while Gran Torino would take care of all of the other times. Izuku smacked his alarm when it started going off. I'm here. I'm here. I am dash. He smacked it with his quirk though and broke it. I'm glad I put the limited edition one away, or else I would have broken it by now, Izuku thought as he got out of bed. He quickly got changed because today would be the first day of school and he refused to be late. Even though he had a quirk now, he still felt nervous about teachers. They have never been helpful to him. The only adults outside of his mother that has helped Izuku has been All Might and Gran Torino. Izuku threw on his UA uniform and went downstairs and started to eat with his mother. Good morning, sweetie. You forgot the tie, Inko said as she went and grabbed it to tie around his neck. Soon she came back down with the tie and started to tie it as Izuku finished eating his breakfast. I'm so proud of you, sweetie. Have a good day and show them what you're made of, Inko said as she kissed his forehead, and he went out the door. After the 10-minute ride on the train, he arrived outside of the gateway for UA. Izuku was in wonder at the size. Even though he was here for the exam a month before, the building was still shocking and grand to look at. Izuku made his way into the building and made his way to his classroom. After about 5 minutes of walking, he arrived at the door for Class 1A. Izuku was marveled at the size of the door but steeled his nerves and grabbed the door and opened it. He stepped in and was greeted by most of the students already being present. There were a group of girls in the back laughing at something while some boys were talking loudly near the front. One boy was being a pervert from what Izuku could see. He was using his quirk to look up a girl's skirt. I was a fool thinking they would be better than middle school, since I'm doubting any of them had a rough childhood with their quirks, Izuku thought. He sat down and waited for homeroom to start. He got a notebook out and was ready for class. After a few more minutes of waiting, the rest of the students arrived and Izuku noticed something in the door when he looked to his right. It was a caterpillar with a face. The face made eye contact with Izuku and then entered more. Sit down and shut up. It's time for homeroom to start. The man said. Some people followed his order but a few didn't. They questioned who he was. I'm 𝗧𝗏-sensei, your homeroom teacher. Now shut up and sit down. Last warning. The teacher stated. The remaining students complied. You all took over a minute to quiet down and sit down. That is a waste of time for Hero Corps students. Get better. Take these uniforms and go get changed. Meet me in the field behind the building. 𝗧𝗏 stated. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 just got up and grabbed the uniform, followed by two other boys that had also sat down and got ready when they first walked in. The rest of the students didn't get up and move until 𝗧𝗏 barked out the order again, snapping everyone out of their shock. 𝗧𝗏 just let out a disappointed sigh at the display of the students. Looks like quite a few will be leaving early. He thought as he also headed out to the field after the last uniform was taken. He arrived to find one of the people he had some interest in on the field already. It was 𝗧𝗵𝗵 who was warming up with stretches. At least he is smart to assume we will be doing physical work. 𝗧𝗏 thought as he waited for everyone else to arrive. After about 10 minutes they all. You all took too long changing. In hero work that isn't acceptable. In those 10 minutes, someone could have died already. He stated. Some scoffed at the comment, which annoyed 𝗧𝗏. Oh, 𝗧𝗏 was going to get so much enjoyment out of expelling some of these brats. He already had at least one on his list to get rid of today. 𝗵𝗃, you placed first in the entrance exam. How far could you throw during middle school? 𝗧𝗏 asked, and all 19 other pairs of eyes were on 𝗧𝗏𝗃, which made him nervous. About 60 meters, sir, 𝗧𝗏𝗃 responded as he caught a ball from 𝗧𝗏. 𝗧𝗏 told him to get into the white circle and throw it the best he could using his quirk. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 got into the circle and power 1 for all up to his current max of 15%. He didn't use float since it didn't provide any boost here. He threw it and it went about 700 meters. We will be doing a physical test where you are allowed to use your quirks to pass, 𝗧𝗏 stated. Some of the students mentioned how this would be easy to do. This ticked 𝗧𝗏 off, so he raised the stakes. If it is so easy, then the last place person will be judged with no potential and expelled from UA. We are a freestyle teaching school, so yes, I can expel you before any of you complain about it. 𝗧𝗏 said. They all were shocked. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was scared, but he gripped his fists and gritted his teeth and had a look of determination in his eyes that 𝗧𝗏 noticed. He also noticed it in the two other boys that got out of the class quickly as well. At least those three rose to the challenge. They haven't been deemed the top students this year for nothing. Though the bar was low to start with. 𝗧𝗏 thought. Some though complained that it wasn't fair. 𝗧𝗏 shut that down quickly though as he talked about natural disasters and villain attacks. Think discrimination is fair. It's not, yet it happens to people on a daily basis. Being a hero means correctly as much unfairness in this world as we can. 𝗧𝗏 stated as he glared at some of the students. As such, they got to work and the test began. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was analyzing people's quirks as the test went off. He kind of felt annoyance at the lack of creativity for some of the quirks. For example, one person had a quirk that allowed them to create spikes out of the ground. They could have used the spike to create a path across the long jump and got them across with it, since they didn't need to touch the ground to create the spike. They only had to send energy into the ground, which could be done while in the air to make the spike grow at a fast pace to get them across. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 and the two other boys that he sat by in class were placed at the top of the charts for all the exams. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 was also placing first for mostly everything. He did come in second on the side-to-side steps due to a kid with a quirk that was perfect for it. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 got creative in most of the tests. He used his float in the 50-meter dash by floating up and then kicking off, which allowed a high speed to be gained, which he maintained by sending out blasts of air to keep the speed. Soon the test came to an end and 𝗧𝗏𝗃 found his name on the scoreboard. He had placed first and was followed by the two other students that were more disciplined in the class. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 had just learned the names off the board and would try talking to them later on when he got the chance. As everyone saw their position, the person in last was a girl that had joined the loud group of girls. They were the ones that also called this test fun and called it unfair to get expelled. 𝗧𝗏 looked at her and said, I told you. The person in the last place is expelled. Also, rank number 15th is expelled as well. Don't think I didn't see you being a pervert and looking up the girls' skirts. You also could have done better in this test but choose not to. Both of you go to the principal's office since you are done. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated. Everyone was shocked. He had meant it. The girl and the perverted boy walked away with tears in their eyes. Some of the other students in the class were laughing at the two of them. This didn't go over well for them at all. The class started with 20 and dropped to now it just dropped to 12 people as 𝗧𝗍𝗧𝗏 just called out 6 names. You 6 that I just called out. Go to the counselor's office and get such to general education. You won't be staying in this class anymore. You're out of the hero course. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated, and everyone was even more shocked. They asked why they were getting kicked, and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated that they had no maturity for the hero course. You 6 started laughing at the other 2 because they got kicked out and scored lower. As such, you're not fit to be heroes. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated, and they tried to argue. He reminded them that the UA hero course is run as the teacher sees fit and that he could do what he wants. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated this while texting on his phone. Izuku assumed it was telling the principal what he just did. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 told everyone to get changed and go home since the day was over but warned that it was only going to get rougher from here on out. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 did call Izuku over though before he could leave. Yes, sensei? Izuku asked nervously. As of now, you're on thin ice unless you can explain why you didn't do better. I don't know how much but I am betting you are holding power back. So explain why now. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said as his eyes grew red and Izuku felt his quirk disappear. Your 𝗧𝗍𝗧𝗏 the erasing hero. Oh, your quirk is so cool. Izuku said, and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 raised an eyebrow at Izuku's words but called him back to the point. Izuku blushed and then started to talk. Yes. You are right that I'm limiting how much power I'm currently using. I can only use 15% of my strength aspect and I'm still getting used to the flying/floating aspect. But I've only started using my quirk for roughly under a year now. Izuku said as he lowered his head, fearing his teacher would expel him for being quirkless before. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 was shocked. Explain. Do you mean you only started working on it in the past year? He asked, and Izuku corrected the misunderstanding. No. I only received it less than a year ago. I've been diagnosed as quirkless up into the last year of middle school. The strength aspect came during my last year of middle school and I somehow activated the floating portion roughly 1 month before the exam. The theory was that I had to increase my muscle mass enough to even house the strength aspect. The first time I used my quirk I broke my arm into parts. I was actually brought to UA and was healed by Recovery Girl if you need verification of this. The arm was that bad. Izuku said as he was really nervous. He then looked at his teacher who had a weird face. Izuku had to know. Was he going to be expelled? Sir, are you going to expel me? Izuku asked. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 felt like he was hit as he recoiled from that question. Though it was a fair one since he had just gotten rid of so many students in one go. No problem, child, I won't. I won't expel you for being quirkless before. This just answers some questions I needed to know since I felt you were holding back, which you have good reason to. Thank you for telling me about this. You're free to go as I need to read your file to make sure I'm up to date on your quirks so we can plan your training better since you have years of difference to make up. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated. Izuku walked off in a hurry. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 might actually be better than I thought. I need to verify the story with his file and Recovery Girl, but it does explain his nervousness. That was weird for someone with his quirk. Quirkless people are not treated kindly in our society. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 thought as he left to go verify the story and do the paperwork for the people he got rid of. As such, the first day came to an end. The class started at 20 and now they are down to 12 students. This means there are only 12 first years in the hero course altogether. This is a small number that will only decrease with time unknown to them, and not all will leave the class due to expulsion. Third POV. Izuku arrived in class the next day and saw the 2 boys that ranked at the top with him yesterday were the only ones in the classroom so far. Izuku decided to introduce himself to them and get to know them better since they seemed the most disciplined in the class. As such, Izuku walked up and introduced himself. Hello, my name is Midoriya, Izuku. Nice to meet you guys. Izuku said as he introduced himself. They looked at him and introduced themselves. The first boy to introduce himself was named Salazar, Kenneth. He had bluish hair and red eyes. He was just a few centimeters taller than 𝗧𝗂𝗧 at 169 centimeters while 𝗧𝗂𝗧 was 165 centimeters. Hello, I'm 𝗧𝗪, but I don't care if people call me by my first name Kenneth. He stated, and he also explained his quirk to 𝗧𝗂𝗧, which was blade 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝗏. He could create red blades of different lengths out of his arm and it consumed his body fat. As such, he always needed to keep some fat on his body. The longer the blade is, the weaker the durability would be, so he stuck to shorter blades most of the time and did close combat. Credit to 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏. The next person introduces themselves. The second boy was named 𝗧𝗠𝗱. I'm 𝗧𝗠𝗱. I don't care what people call me either, but most don't call me my first name due to the weird name. Most just call me Lloyd even if they are really close. Lloyd stated with a smirk on his face. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 felt like Lloyd was going to be the crazy type of person. Lloyd then explained his quirk and how he can use it in combat. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 found his feeling of manipulation quite amazing. It could be used for more than just combat. Rescues as well if it can be done. You could apply positive emotions to your teammates to help them get up and going if they were discouraged or being beaten. You could install calmness and safety into civilians that are scared or little kids to ensure you can get them out of the combat area easier. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 said as he muttered about many things. Ignore the age in the picture. Also, credit to 𝗬𝗏𝗏. Then 𝗧𝗂𝗧 heard some whispers from other people. Their other classmates had walked into the classroom without 𝗧𝗂𝗧 realizing it, and they were talking about how he could use his quirk on them to hinder them in class. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 could tell Lloyd was sensitive about that and bet that he got picked on for that aspect of possibility. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 refused to keep his mouth shut. How about you all shut up? You're whispering bullshit about him possibly using his quirk on you when he hasn't done SHT. You are pathetic if this is how you think hero in trainings should act. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 stated. Salazar just agreed with 𝗧𝗂𝗧 and called them out on their words. Lloyd looked happy at them standing up for him. Then they heard a cough from the door. They saw Aizawa-sensei. He did not look, please. To let you all know. I did hear all of that. To those that were talking SHT. This is your one and only warning. Discriminate against someone for their quirk and I will kick you out of my class. Do you understand? Aizawa asked. They nodded their heads and he told 𝗧𝗂𝗧 to sit down so the class could start. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 sat down next to the two boys and started to listen to the class. The class for the most part was normal. Soon they made it to lunch. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 and the two boys all sat together. Lloyd had thanked them for standing up for him and Salazar told him it was no problem. He stated that he had gotten bullied a bit in the past because people thought he would become a villain due to his quirk's nature of only really being useful for combat. We three can be friends from now on, Salazar said, and 𝗧𝗂𝗧 had to tear down his face. They noticed and asked what was wrong. It's nothing. I've just never had friends. I've always been bullied since my quirk came in late and I was assumed quirkless for most of my life, 𝗧𝗂𝗧 said with a few tears in his eyes. The two other boys froze. They knew what bullying was like and they knew the statistics for those that were quirkless. SHT. When the hell did he get his quirks? They thought. They had asked him and 𝗧𝗂𝗧 told the truth that he's only had it for under a year now. Well, no problem then. We three are the misfits then. Lloyd stated as both boys hugged 𝗧𝗂𝗧. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just hugged back since he didn't know what to do. Friendship was a new concept for him and he wished they would never go away. Though poor 𝗧𝗂𝗧 didn't know what fate had in store for him and his two friends. The world is cruel after all, though they have time before fate comes for them each. Soon lunch came to an end and it was time to return to the classroom. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 and his new friends noticed the looks that they got from the other students in the class. Honestly, at this point, 𝗧𝗂𝗧 didn't want to learn any of their names. He only studied their quirk due to having heroic classes with them. Though speaking of heroic class, there is one coming up right now. Aizawa-sensei walked into the classroom and told everyone to get their outfit cases and go get changed and head to the training grounds. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 and his two friends quickly changed and got to the control room for the training ground and waited. They did find another teacher there waiting with their homeroom teacher. Lloyd and Salazar are wearing the outfits in the pictures above, while 𝗧𝗂𝗧 is wearing the one below. Ignore the black WHP portion. Everything else is as shown in the picture for his outfit. They all liked their outfits and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was glad he allowed 𝗵𝗃𝗀 and All Might to design his outfit. All Might had his friend 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 create the outfit so it would hold up to the force of one for all. Though All Might did say that 𝗧𝗵𝗃 did not know about the quirk. He did know that All Might had taken 𝗧𝗑𝗧 under his wing and that was it. The three boys waited and waited for about 5 minutes and the others finally arrived. Aizawa groaned and made a comment about wasting time. The other teacher was introduced as 𝗧𝗵𝗲. They were told they would be doing a battle round inside a wooded area that they had set up. The trees weren't too close to each other that it limited movement but they were still dense enough that people had to be careful with attacks. The class was split up into teams of 3 and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 and the two boys had landed on the same team which made them happy. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 team was called up first and were put against 2 boys and 1 girl. The objective of the match was the elimination of the other team. 𝗧𝗑𝗧, 𝗧𝗠, and 𝗧𝗪𝗧 talked to plan out. How good is everyone at close combat? 𝗧𝗑𝗧 asked. They each responded that they were decent at it and could hold on in a quirkless fight and some quirked combat in close quarters. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 was better than 𝗧𝗠 due to the nature of his quirk. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was also good and would be better in this forest since he could use the trees to move around. I was thinking 𝗧𝗠 provides support by using his quirk to place the feeling of tiredness or sleepiness onto the others. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 and I could engage in close combat with 𝗧𝗪𝗧 being in the front mostly and I would use my speed to maneuver through the forest and attack from any weak point I can find. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stated. They talked it over for a few more minutes and adjusted the plan. 𝗧𝗠 would also be up close to 𝗧𝗪𝗧 in the fighting and since he has worked on capture gear that is on his arms so he could grab people and use it to trip people. They noticed it was similar to their teacher's support gear but a bit different since the teacher gear was meant to capture while 𝗧𝗠's was to hold and just really trip people up. Soon the round was called to start and they got to work. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 moved up into the air with float and used the trees as bounce pads and kept himself above the other two. After about 5 minutes of searching, they found the other team. They knew the quirks of the other team. One girl had a repulsion quirk that she could send things flying away from her from blades, rocks, or people. One guy had a quirk that allowed him to absorb the texture of material so he could turn his skin into rock or metal. The other guy had a quirk that allowed him to send electric blasts at people. Overall, very powerful quirks. However, powerful quirks mean nothing in front of strategy and teamwork. The other team didn't notice 𝗧𝗑𝗧 in the air. He used this and got behind them and waited for the fight to start. As 𝗧𝗠 started impacting their emotions, the opposing team noticed and were resisting the sleepiness that 𝗧𝗠 was throwing onto them. Their moves were a bit sluggish. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 rushed the girl and fought her as the other two boys were moving. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 kicked off and landed a kick to the side of the person with the absorption quirk. They yelled out in pain which caught the attention of their teammates. 𝗧𝗠 used that moment and tripped up the other boy. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 broke from the girl and charged the boy that 𝗧𝗠 tripped up and knocked him on the neck with the handle of the knife he had made, knocking him out. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 then started to fight the girl again. 𝗧𝗠 tied the down boy up to get him called from the match. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 used the confusion and jumped back up and bounced off different trees and kept sending small air blasts at the boy with the electrical blast quirk which kept him from attacking 𝗧𝗑𝗧's teammates. 𝗧𝗠 and 𝗧𝗪𝗧 both teamed up against the girl who was resisting now and after about 5 minutes were able to tie her up since she just kept getting tired from the feelings that 𝗧𝗠 was sending her via his quirk. The last boy had let his guard down when he heard his teammate curse when she got captured. At that moment 𝗧𝗑𝗧 went for a close combat attack and landed a kick to the guy's stomach. This sent him stumbling backward due to the force behind the kick and threw up his lunch. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 then pinned him down to the ground until his teammates came over and placed him in capture tape since the guy was struggling and the moment 𝗧𝗑𝗧 let up he would attack. The match was called. Both teams headed back to the control room where the teachers started to talk about what went wrong and what went right. The winning team did pretty much everything correct and thought it out on a level of a pro. They knew their individual weaknesses and compensated with each other. 𝗧𝗪𝗧 is better at close combat than 𝗧𝗠, so they had him in front and 𝗧𝗠 supporting him. 𝗵𝗃𝗀 is good at speed and surprise attacks due to his strength and float aspects of his quirk. They knew when to help each other and when to stick to their opponent. Aizawa said. The room was silent. The three boys stood next to each other and fist bumped each other. The other team was glaring at them. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 then talked about the losing team. The team that lost didn't plan at all. They also didn't observe all of their surroundings even when they knew the other team had a member that could go via air. This leads to a costly mistake and allowed them to be ambushed, which lead to their team falling apart. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 stated. The other matches then started. Overall, the teachers ripped into the students since they all didn't do that well except 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏's team. Even though the teachers pointed it out the first round, the other teams still didn't plan, and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 could see 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 getting annoyed by his classmates. The battle training class had come to an end. The class was dismissed and told to go change and go home. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 and everyone else quickly got changed and left. Lloyd had asked 𝗧𝗑𝗧 and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 if they wanted to hang out. They agreed and decided to go to an arcade that was nearby. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 texted his mother, 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗺, and 𝗷𝗵𝗏 that he was going to hang out with new friends that he made in class so he would be late for his training. They texted back that it was fine since they were happy he was making new friends. 𝗷𝗵𝗏 had learned of 𝗧𝗑𝗧's more detailed past, and let us say it wasn't pretty. The moment 𝗧𝗑𝗧 graduated, 𝗷𝗵𝗏 had lawyers tear the school apart in a police investigation. All of the teachers are now in prison, while some students that tried to go to hero schools were blacklisted. 𝗷𝗵𝗏 didn't tell 𝗧𝗑𝗧 he was doing this until it happened when 𝗧𝗑𝗧 found it on the news. Though 𝗃𝗀𝗃 never heard of it since they kept it between them and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 and the two arrived at the arcade and started to play different games. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was enjoying his time so much. Thank you guys for bringing me here. This is the first time I've been since I had no reason to come in the past. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 said as he was laughing and holding his side. Lloyd just responded with a no problem. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 just said, remember, we are the three misfits. We shall stick together to the end. He said. They all cheered for the misfits. Soon an hour passed and it was time for 𝗧𝗑𝗧 to go train. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 headed off and arrived at the warehouse after about 10 minutes of walking. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 talked about the fun he had with his new friends and how the day went. Some of the class is definitely quirkist, most likely. Is it bad that I'm hoping Aizawa-sensei gets rid of them as he has done with the others? 𝗧𝗑𝗧 asked as he was dodging 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 as he was flying through the hanging obstacles. Gran just told him no, that it wasn't bad of him to think that. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was glad to hear that and just focused on the training. He was getting better and better after each passing day in using the float quirk, but he wasn't ready to use it by itself without using one for all to guide himself in the air. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was also spending his days now working on his feet work in quirkless fighting, since he could just apply his quirk to it to give him a boost when he needs to in actual combat. The bruises he would receive though would hurt the next day. Third POV. A few weeks passed and a standard schedule had been set. They would have normal classes and then have a heroic class every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday where they would do battle training or some other type of physical training. 𝗧𝗑𝗧, Lloyd, and 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 have set themselves as the top students of the class easily in heroic classes and in their normal classes. Each of them keeps trading the top 3 spots between each other, with 𝗧𝗑𝗧 tending to stay at number 1 or #the 3 boys have also become very close and hang out a lot after school. They have traded numbers and stay in contact and help each other study as well. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 has been working on combing float and one for all into a new combat style. For the most part, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 uses one for all as a way to speed up the float to just move around, but 𝗧𝗑𝗧 has been thinking of combing them to create a new method of combat. The idea came from how 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 moves around. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 has been copying him too much. He's noticed this and wanted to be more of his own style. As such, during one of the training sessions in the warehouse, he came up with a mix of both 𝗷𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃's and Gran's fighting styles and created an adaptation for himself. The idea behind it was that while fighting he would have the float quirk on for most of it. He currently uses it just for flying, but this way he would use it for an increase in speed and lighter body movement. An example would be that he would have it on very low power output so that he is not really floating but just making his body lighter. The float quirk works in the principle similar to OFA, that the more power he puts out the stronger the quirk is. As such, if he is barely putting any power into float, then he doesn't really float but makes his body lighter as a side effect. As such, when he goes to kick someone he would have a faster kick speed since his body is made lighter due to the float quirk. He would also use it to dodge by again making his body lighter and allowing him to move faster in hand-to-hand fighting. As 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was training this, he didn't notice that 𝗷𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃, and a third individual were watching him move. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was moving faster than what he has shown and they didn't know how he was doing it. Did he have a large increase in his control of One for All? All Might thought. They kept watching 𝗧𝗑𝗧 train and then he stopped and grabbed a drink of water. All Might called out and scared 𝗧𝗑𝗧, who ended up coughing due to drinking a large gulp of water. Sorry my boy. I wanted to introduce you to Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗃. He is one of the people I mentioned before and I wanted you two to meet in the event you ever had a problem. You could talk to someone in the police more safely about secrets. All Might stated. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 introduced himself and they asked him some questions about what he was doing. I've combined some aspects of All Might's fight style with Gran's and made my own. I was copying Gran or All Might too much. I'm now using the float with One for All to do more close combat instead of just straight speed attacks. The float, I'm keeping it a low level, allows me to glide more or else across the ground and makes me really light. This allows my kicks and punches to be much faster than normal at 15%. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stated, and they were all shocked that he came up with this fighting style of his. Let's spar for a bit and see how you do against a moving opponent. All Might said as he buffed up and they got into the fighting area that was just a clear floor with some mats down on the ground. The fight started off with All Might attacking at 30%, which was a very fast speed for most people. This should also be around the difference in their power, since 𝗧𝗑𝗧's One for All should be 10 or 20% stronger and they were thinking it was closer to 10% stronger. As such, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was keeping up with his 15% of OFA and just glided around All Might as if he was dancing. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 would push off the ground and bounce off the walls, floor, or roof and then come back to the ground and do quick movements around All Might. It looked like he was ice skating somewhat. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was able to keep up for a while, but the difference in experience played a big role and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 finally lost. Good going. Though I wasn't doing very aggressive in doing attacks, I was doing them with the aim of speed instead of just overpowering. You kept up with me doing that at 25%. All Might stated as he pulled 𝗧𝗑𝗧 off the floor. They talked more about 𝗧𝗑𝗧's new combat method and they realized that the way 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was fighting allowed him to have the speed of 20% while he was only at 15%. This was impressive and very good for 𝗧𝗑𝗧 since he was finding a way to combine the two quirks in combat and allowed him to hide it more efficiently in front of others. Soon though the training came to an end and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 went home. The class was alerted that they would be attending a rescue training at the USJ at the end of the week and 𝗧𝗑𝗧 didn't want to overdo it with his body and miss that training session since it would be important for his hero work. He could get combat training from Gran or All Might, but more hands-on rescue training was better to get from UA since they had the training space for it. Soon the end of the week came. A few more students had gotten kicked out of the class. They started at 20, went to 18, then to 12 people and now they are at 9 people left. The reason that 𝗧𝗧𝗏 gave was the fact that the 3 boys had decided to harass some people at a bar that they somehow got into and decided to drink. They had gotten arrested. Having a fun time isn't a problem. Having a party isn't a problem for UA. Drinking under the age though is a large problem for UA. If you are found doing it, kiss your time here at UA gone. You won't even be offered a spot in general education. 𝗧𝗧𝗏 stated. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was kind of happy. He wasn't glad that people got kicked out, but those 3 were part of the people that were discriminating against his friend for his quirks, so 𝗧𝗑𝗧 didn't care about them. Soon, 𝗧𝗏𝗏 told everyone to get their outfits on and get changed because they were going to the USJ for rescue training. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was happy about the rescue training. Soon they all changed and had arrived outside and got on the bus. The bus had some seats in the back that faced forward, but it also had seats in the front that was just against the wall of the bus. As such, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 chooses to sit near the front and his 2 friends just sat with him. One on each side of him. No, this isn't going to be a yaoi ship. They are all just clingy since none of them really had friends due to bullying. This will be a purely platonic relationship between them. They got talking about what they wanted to do over the weekend and they decided to go swimming at the newly cleaned beach. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 just blushed a bit due to embarrassment at the thought of going to the beach that he himself cleaned with his new friends. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 noticed that the other students were giving them side glances. For some reason, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 didn't have a good feeling. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 decided to take his phone out and texted his 2 friends. Guys, be careful when we get there and during the training. I'm having a bad feeling at the looks our classmates are giving us. Just don't look back or they will know that we know something is off. Should we warn Sensei? Understood, and how would we alert him without them seeing? The good point. We won't be able to. Soon the text conversation came to an end after a few more texts, and they just pretended to stay on their phones. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was worried about what was going to happen, so he kept his guard up and kept float running on the lowest level just in case the moment they stepped off the bus. As everyone stepped off the bus, 𝗧𝗧𝗏 warned them all to be on their best behavior and not to screw around, since this was a crucial part of their education. They soon walked into the facility and found the rescue hero 13 and the pro hero Vlad King. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 wanted to start a mutter rant about the two pro heroes in front of him, but Lloyd and Salazar just stopped him by holding him back. They just shook their heads at their friend's antics. At least his hero nerd knowledge comes in handy during battle, they both thought. The pro hero 13 started to talk. Hello everyone. Welcome to UA's 𝗧𝗓𝗧. I am 13, the rescue specialist employed by UA and the designer of this building. 13 stated. Now, there are many things to know about rescue work. It's important to keep the civilians calm and talk kindly to them and to reassure them that everything will be all right and that you will get them out of the situation. 13 stated. 13 then talked about in previous heroic classes they learned the combat abilities of their quirk, and now it was time to learn how to try and apply them for rescue work. 13 even talked about some of their quirks and how they could be applied in rescue even though they are combat-focused. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 and his friends asked some questions about what they were doing, and this got nods of approval from the teachers since they had asked questions. They asked things like if they would go into each zone or would only be working certain ones today. They also asked about how dangerous the settings would be that they are working on during the first attempts since they are new at this. The teachers responded that they would hit as many zones as possible but would have more trips to the USJ in the future. They also said it would be the lowest setting until they gained experience to handle the higher ones, though if the teachers agreed on it they could increase if they felt it was safe enough for the students. Though they would warn whatever group is working on the increase. As such, they headed off into the first zone. The first zone that they would be working in would be the landslide zone. The teachers would have the students save injured dummies that were placed inside the collapsed buildings and buried buildings. The students had to dig out the dummies and determine if they were still alive or not. If they weren't, they had to leave them, and if they were still alive, then they needed to be saved. Overall, this zone went by quickly and the students made it through a few different zones. Then trouble struck. The students and teachers were in the mountain zone. As they had split apart into different teams, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had joined his two friends since he didn't want to be with the others. He was glad that he did this since everything took a turn for the worst. As they were working through the simulation, there was a shaking feeling. The mountain started to have boulders come down from the top. What? Sensei said they wouldn't increase it without warning us. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 said as he powered up to 15% and slammed his fist into the boulder, destroying it. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was so glad he wore his entire suit, since even with increased strength it kind of hurts slamming his fist into large boulders like that. Lloyd and Salazar were limited to what they could do since the boulders were far too big for them to do much to them. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 could see the other 6 students and he saw them smirking. Do they have something to do with this? 𝗧𝗑𝗧 thought, then he remembered one of them had an electrocommunication quirk that allowed them to tap into electronic devices if they weren't highly encrypted. This meant 𝗧𝗑𝗧's classmate could get into the control panel since it was a simple interface. Are they trying to kill us? 𝗧𝗑𝗧 thought but had said out loud. Both of his friends had also noticed the other students and were said since they were just up there smirking instead of getting the teachers. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 then grabbed Lloyd and Salazar and jumped from the side of the mountain and down towards the bottom. Hold on, he yelled as he grabbed them. They held on for dear life. About 40 seconds later they made it to the ground with a large thud since 𝗧𝗑𝗧 wasn't used to carrying people using float or one for all, so he wasn't used to adjusting his power yet for the landing. The sound of them landing drew the attention of 𝗧𝗧𝗏, who came over. Why you all down here? He asked. Then 13 came running over. 𝗧𝗧𝗏. Someone had gotten control of the panel that controls this zone. Midoriya, Lloyd, and Salazar's side of the mountain has boulders coming down. He yelled as he ran up, but then noticed the boys he was talking about. Yeah. There were boulders. Large enough to kill us. Also, the other classmates of ours just stood there and smirked and laughed at us. Salazar said in a cold tone. Before the teachers could even say anything, Lloyd spoke up. We know what he's implying and I'm applying it as well. They stood there and just watched. Lloyd stated in an angry tone. The teachers were tense. If the accusation is true, then it's attempted murder. Vlad King was called and told to go detain the other students. Soon everyone was down and present in the front area. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had also been called and warned of what happened and he wasn't pleased. What 𝗧𝗲𝗧𝗛 doesn't know is that a far scarier person right now isn't pleased either when he got alerted of his student almost being killed by his classmates when he received a call from a principal of UA. After waiting for a bit, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 arrived and he was accompanied by Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁. Hello, students. I've heard we have had a problem here at the training facility and I brought a friend to help me go through the questioning since I wanted a third party from UA to do the questioning. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. Then they started to ask questions. Izuku had laid out his claims of what he felt on the bus and that he had warned his friends. They couldn't figure a way to warn Aizawa-sensei without alerting the other students, so they kept their guard up. They then talked about how on the mountain they felt it shake. They said they saw the other students standing higher up and smirking down at them. Izuku also pointed out that one of them did have a quirk capable of interfering with the control panel that would allow them to mess with it. After getting Izuku's group statement, Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 started to question the other students. It didn't go well. They had denied everything that Izuku and his friends claimed. However, unknown to them, the person that was asking all of the questions had a lie detector quirk. Izuku's friends were getting nervous since this would turn into he said she said situation. However, Izuku wasn't nervous at all. After a bit of time, the situation came to an end. I've heard enough. You 6 are under arrest for attempted murder. Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 stated, and they were shocked. They started complaining that he had no authority and that they had no evidence. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 and my quirk is lie detector, which is usable in court. Everything you all said was false. Meaning you did do the crime of hacking the control panel. The rest of you are also guilty by association since you didn't stop him and knew about it. Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 stated. All of the students were frozen. Izuku just felt happy that people like them wouldn't become heroes. The teachers tied everyone up and the detective placed them all in cuffs. They had a few police cars waiting outside that took them all away. It looks like UA owes you 3 an apology. You 3 almost lost your life due to your classmates under our watch. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 stated as he bowed his head a bit. Izuku just told him it was fine since the school dealt with them and had them arrested. The classes for them were cancelled for rest of the day and they were allowed to go home early due to this incident. Izuku and the others decided to go to a local park nearby and just hang out. We went from 1 full hero course class to 18 people. From 18 to 12, 12 to 9, and 9 now to just us 3. Izuku groaned out as he laid down on the grass ground at the park since it was nice out. Lloyd and Salazar just laid down next to him and agreed with him. Misfits for the win, 𝗧𝗏𝗧 stated. The other 2 just groaned at that since it almost cost them their lives for the so-called win. Third POV, the incident happened on Friday, so the 3 boys had the entire weekend to spend hanging out or training. They all went to a gym that offered parkour lessons for a cheap price and started to do them. They wanted to increase their skills the best they could and didn't want to waste any chance. Also, training together was fun for the 3 boys since it offered them someone to talk to and goof around with. As such, the weekend went by quickly and it was now time for them to go back to school. They all wondered what would happen to their class now. There were only 3 of them total and that was hard for them to do any pieces of training since they had odd numbers. All 3 of them were sitting in the classroom. It was weird only having 3 of them with so many desks in the room. After about 10 minutes with their teacher being 5 minutes later, Aizawa-sensei walks into the room. As you all know, you 3 are the last remaining for the entire first year, Aizawa-sensei stated. They knew this quite well. As such, we need to decide what to do with you 3, Aizawa stated. This made them tense. Were they going to get rid of them as well? They all thought. Lloyd asked the question on their mind. Sir, are you guys getting rid of us as well? He asked and Izuku could hear the nervousness in the voice. Aizawa just replied no. We need to go have a long discussion with the principal and figure stuff out. As such, Follow me to a meeting room where he is waiting for us, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated as he went out the door. They left their things and followed along. They soon arrived at the meeting room and found Principal 𝗧𝗏 waiting with documents and a computer. Hello boys. Thank you for arriving, 𝗧𝗏 stated. All of them sat down and took the tea that 𝗧𝗏 offered. Down to business, 𝗧𝗏 stated. We need to decide what is going to happen moving forward. I need to be blunt in the fact that we've never had something like this happen. UA has had the worst batch of students this year. That is why it was dropped to one hero course only instead of two. We needed to remove everyone else but you three who were the top scorers in the entrance exam and written text. Then we also had the problem with the previous 6 that tried an attempt on your life which left just you 3. 𝗧𝗏 stated. 𝗧𝗏 then sipped some tea and took a second. As it stands, you 3 have the potential to be heroes and we will be happy to teach you. The issue is your class size as I stated earlier, 𝗧𝗏 said. At this point, 𝗧𝗏 started to speak instead of 𝗧𝗏. Even when classes were limited in the past, they never have been this small. Ever. 𝗧𝗏 stated. The smallest class size we have had before now was 12 students. However, that went out the window quickly and now we are faced with a class size of 3. 𝗧𝗏 started looking tired of this entire mess. They explained that they needed to ask questions to get a good grasp of how to move forward. These questions will give us a look at your current education and your current training and how much free time you have. We would like to specialize in what the classes you 3 will take together to fit you guys more, 𝗧𝗏 stated. Soon they started to ask random seeming questions. Though one did cause some heads to turn at Izuku when he answered. This question was about all the training they currently do. Lloyd and Salazar talked about how they do some weight training out of school and they recently picked up parkour at a location nearby. Then it was Izuku's turn to explain his. However, before he could answer, 𝗧𝗏 just started. He does weight training 4 days a week, does cardio training every day, does parkour with these 2 boys, does quirk training outside of school at a private location, and has a meal plan and made to suit him, 𝗧𝗏 stated. 𝗧𝗏 asked how he knew that and 𝗧𝗏 said that Izuku's trainers are close friends of his that keep him up to date on his work. I also provide them access to UA files for anything regarding him. You will meet them likely by the end of the year. The 2 boys likely will meet them sooner than you by my guess, 𝗧𝗏 stated. They then talked about education level. Mine was mostly self-study. Due to me being quirkless, teachers didn't treat me well and tried to harm my education, Izuku said. 𝗧𝗏 knew about the case since he helped on it. I know the details since I was involved in the criminal case against your former schools, 𝗧𝗏 stated. Izuku was a bit nervous talking about it since he didn't want to remember the pain from then. They got a decent idea of where everyone was sitting in their education level and 𝗧𝗏 gave them all a test to see for sure. About 1 hour later they all finished the test. 𝗧𝗏 quickly graded the tests and they found out that they all passed their first year of education for high school. Congratulations on passing your finals test for your first year, 𝗧𝗏 stated with a smirk. The boys were shocked. They had just been given the first year final test. This means we can specialize your classes even more and ensure you are being challenged in your learning. This has given me a good idea of how to start your classes from now on, 𝗧𝗏 stated. 𝗧𝗏 and 𝗧𝗏 talked for a bit and dismissed the boys to go eat. We will have an updated schedule by the time you're done eating lunch, 𝗧𝗏 stated with a cheer. The boys went and grabbed lunch and ate under a tree outside. I didn't think our day would go like this, Izuku said as he just laid his head against the tree and groaned. The 2 others just groaned as well. They got tricked into taking their final exams without even knowing about it. What if we failed the test? Then what would he have done? Lloyd stated. Soon the lunch came to an end and they arrived back in their classroom or what they thought was their classroom. The classroom was now different. Instead of all the desks, they had a large table with their chairs located at it. The walls had bookshelves lined up and filled with all different types of books that they might need. There was a display case in the back with their uniforms that required a key card to open it. There were also laptops next to the display case on a charging station. On the floor between the table and the case were bean bags and some comfortable looks chairs. There was a teacher's desk in the front left corner for Eraserhead and then a small cot for him to sleep on. They all laughed at that. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was standing next to the bean bag when Lloyd dropped onto the bag and pulled 𝗧𝗑𝗧 down onto it with him. Salazar just fell down onto them both as well and smashed 𝗧𝗑𝗧 in between them. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 just groaned in pain from being pressed between them. "Going to push my guts out is what you two are going to do," 𝗧𝗑𝗧 said. Soon the door opened and there stood Nizu with 𝗧𝗬𝗧𝗏. "I see you're enjoying the new classroom. This room will be your home for the next 3 years. So I suggest taking care of it. There is also a small fridge in the back corner if you didn't notice for you to store meals from home or drinks. Just be responsible with what you bring in and clean up after yourself," Nizu stated. They then each received a custom schedule for their first year. The schedule was as followed: PRD 1, Homeroom PRD 2, Basic Education classes Math, History, English, etc. starting at second year level lunch PRD 3, Specialized Education. Classes PRD 4, Heroics 101. The homeroom was an hour and they could do what they wish in it as long as 𝗧𝗬𝗧 didn't have anything. The basic education class took the rest of the morning and would be teaching them their second-year classes during their first year and into their second year if they didn't finish everything. It would go on whatever pace they could handle. The third PRD was going to be classes that each of them specialize in. For example, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 would be learning coding to encrypt his notebooks and learning from Nizu sometimes to make them better. The other two boys would learn things that they would specialize in as well. The last PRD was all of their remaining day, which was about 3 hours. This class was going to be physical class, support department when they needed it, hero law, and a blend of other things as the school sees fit. Overall, the schedule was more streamlined and flexible to fit the three of them and keep them pushing forward to advance at whatever pace they could handle. Then Nizu talked about the sports festival. "Since there are only 3 of you in the hero class anymore, we are doubtful anyone will have enough skills and ability to impress us enough to get into the class," Nizu stated, and then said that the festival would be in 2 weeks and they could train as they saw fit for it. They were told to sit down and class started. A part of their advanced schedule was the fact that they would be given all homework for the entire week on Friday and it would be due on the next Friday. As such, they sat down and got to work doing their homework. The boys worked together to do the homework. The rules only said that they couldn't share answers, so they didn't. They just helped each other with things they got stuck on and finished the work whenever they did. 𝗧𝗬𝗧 just sat on the cot and slept while listening to them a bit. Soon the day ended and the boys all went to the gym and started to train. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was debating on asking All Might about revealing their relationship to his friends, but that was a question for later. He wanted to trust them with it since it looked like they would be friends for a long time. As he was thinking of this, they started to train. The boys were working on their own individual skills but also some teamwork abilities since they believed there would be a teamwork round. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was also training with Gran and All Might on getting his landing right with other people and carrying others while in the air. They made him carry them both and practice his power while floating and landing. As such, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was getting better at it over the 2 weeks that were given for the training. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 knew his friends were also doing really well in their own training and they were all itching to fight each other in the ring during the sports festival. They did have some spars during the training, but they all held back by a lot since they wanted to hide some of their skills and give surprises in the tournament. Their educational classes were coming along as well. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was a bit scared of his first lesson with Nizu. His friends gave him a look of pity and he didn't know why. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 entered the office and the lesson started. He soon figured out why they gave him a look of pity. Nizu was a SLV driver in the speed he went and the hard material he gave. However, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 enjoyed it even though it was hard. He's never felt this challenged by his teachers before and he loved the feeling of it. Principal Nizu: "I can't wait for our future lessons. I've never been this challenged by my past teachers before and it's enjoyable," 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stated, and this caused Nizu to have an evil grin on his face. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 felt a cold chill go down his spine after that smile and wondered if he just signed his own death warrant. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 told his friends how the lesson went and they were shocked that he enjoyed it but could understand the problem of never being challenged by a teacher. They soon went their separate ways for the day since there were only a few days left until the festival and they wanted to train individually and in private. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 has been working hard and he's also discovered that he can now push one for all to 18% from his previous 15%. This made him so happy. Even though it was only 3% in an increase, it was still an increase no matter what. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 has also gotten better at his control of float, but it still wasn't the best by itself. It was getting there, but it would take more time to be at a good level to use just by itself without one for all supporting it. 𝗧𝗂𝗧's fighting style has also gotten better since 𝗧𝗏 had started to teach them quirkless combat, since that is what he relied on so much. He told them that quirks can't be used 100% of the time, so they needed to be prepared to fight quirkless if it came to it. He also suggested to them to have some weapons or support gear that they could use to attack or defend with. As such, most of them had small knives attached to their outfits, as 𝗧𝗏 did. He admitted he hardly ever uses it, but it has saved his life a few times, which had made it worth carrying it around with him all the time. Soon it was time for the sports festival, and they were all ready to announce to the world that they were here. Third POV. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 and the two other boys were sitting in the waiting room. They were about to go out on stage and declared that they were here to the world. They were also about to go out there as the sole students of 1A. That fact made them nervous since their school reputation was relying on them. UA was the school that produced amazing heroes every single year. If they did horrible, then it would look bad on the school since they were the only hero students. 𝗧𝗏 had come down and told them not to worry so much about that fact and just do the best they could. Hey guys. When we get internship offers, do you want to do them together if we all get the same place that invites us? 𝗧𝗂𝗧 asked them out of the blue. They were shocked at the request but agreed to it. They always did have good teamwork and wanted to expand on it. After about 5 more minutes of waiting in the waiting room, they heard President Mike go over the sound system and started to call everyone out. They then called our class 1A, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome UA's sole first-year hero class 1A. Please also note, yes, there are only 3 students this year. We only want those that we believe are plus ultra. And they have shown it through their determination and will. Mike yelled out. The crowd cheered for them, and many found it amazing that only 3 people were in 1A. That had to mean they were very strong students in their own right. Soon, all the core students were standing on the stage. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 walked up to the microphone since he wanted to do it this year. Welcome everyone. This year the year representative is 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗃, the number 1 in both the written exam and the hero course entrance exam, stated 𝗧𝗵𝗃. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 walked up to the microphone and took a second. He then started to talk. Welcome and thank you for coming today. As you notice, there isn't another hero course. There aren't other students except me and my 2 friends in 1A. We survived the entrance exam. We survived the purge of 1A when others got expelled for their poor attitude towards heroics. We will continue to keep pushing forward since we aim to light the flame of hope into those that we will go on to protect. We are all heroes even if we belong to the other courses like the support department. Without these people, the heroes today couldn't do their job. If we all remember All Might from his early career, he himself used support gear on his outfit to help him do better. Everyone needs support from someone else. It's our goal of UA to go on and be the support for our society. As such, let US go beyond plus ultra. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 said as he shouted the last part. Everyone in the crowd started to cheer out and said plus ultra as well. The staff in the staff box was thrilled with 𝗧𝗂𝗧's speech. It addressed the issue of them being the last members of the hero course but also aimed to bring unity between the courses. They were happy with the speech and it seemed well received amongst the other students. Soon 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called everyone's attention again. Now let us look forward and see what the first event will be. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called out. Soon the round was selected and it turned out that the event will be a King of the Hill match. There would be 42 pillars created that you needed to maintain hold of. The pillars also varied in height as well. From the lowest being the 42nd one and the tallest being the first place one. 𝗵𝗃𝗧 came out and created the pillars. The round was started and everyone went off. 𝗧𝗂𝗧 just grabbed his 2 friends and dropped them off on the 3rd and 2nd pillar while he floated to the first one. Well, look at that. 1A is helping each other out even though it's a solo match. Mike said, but 𝗧𝗏 came over and said it was smart since there is no rule against it. Villains won't play fair, so why should heroes play fair 24/ if there is no rule stopping them from doing it? Then I think my students to go ahead and do it. They need to survive and live to protect more people in the future. 𝗧𝗏 said, which made everyone cheer for the 1A students. They all watched as students were trying to go up for each higher position. Some that had lower numbers attempted to fight for a higher one. Some were able to do it while others got knocked down and failed. Some tried to go for 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏, but he just used blasts of air from his punches and knocked them back. 𝗧𝗏 and 𝗧𝗏 were able to go through their opponents with relative ease. 𝗧𝗏 got a few blades from 𝗧𝗏 to help defend himself. 𝗧𝗏 just threw blunt blades at some people but kept a long sword to fight most people that tried to get to him. Most people got scared off from him due to the blades that he wielded. 𝗧𝗏 just used his feeling manipulation to make people fear him. He induced the feeling of overwhelming fear into those that got close to his pillar, and it kept most everyone away from his pillar. The few that did brave through the fear just got kicked down from his pillar when they came up, since he switched from fear to overwhelming tiredness. Then 𝗧𝗏 used the knife to scare them and kick them. This kept going on for about 10 minutes until the round was called. The crowd went wild at the fact that the sole 3 hero core students held the top 3 spots. Look at this. We have our top 42 members, and the sole first-year hero students were the ones that held the top the entire time. Let us see if they can hold the top in the next round. Mike yelled out. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 walked back up and had anyone not on a pillar exit the stage. Then the pillars were brought down and the 42 members stood in front of the stadium. Good job, you 42 members. Let us see what round we will have for our next match, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 said. Then a screen appeared on one portion of the stadium and many different rounds went across the screen. Soon it slowed down and came to a stop on a cavalry battle. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏, 𝗧𝗏, and 𝗧𝗏 were happy at that. They had trained in hopes that this would happen, since they observed from the news that the cavalry battle happened every 2 or 3 years on average. Everyone needs to split up into teams of 3 or 4 members. Once everyone has a team, we will start, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 yelled. The 3 boys just got together since they had trained for this. Oh, looks like the 3 members of 1A are sticking together. Are they planning to take it to the top all the way? But it's also risky. If they get eliminated in this round, then no one from the hero course makes it to the final round, Mike stated. All eyes were now on the 3 boys. Everyone in the stadium was looking at them with eyes that looked like they were looking at a burger and they haven't eaten for weeks. Damn it, present Mike. Just have to stir the pot, 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 thought. The round started and 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 just used his air blast to keep people away, since his points were worth 1 million points. Everyone wanted it. Then 𝗧𝗏 turned up his quirk and made anyone in a radius feel fear. It's one of the things he has been training. The ability to make a wide range of people feel the same emotion at the same time. He could do it if someone was really close, but now he could make it spread across the entire field, but it was a weaker feeling, unlike if he focused it onto one person. Everyone recoiled in fear. Some pushed past it by sheer willpower, but they were nervous. 𝗧𝗏 used his knives and made them dull when he created them and just started throwing them at enemies that were getting close. Some just dodged the knives and pushed forward. For those that got close, 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 just used air blasts onto them and forced them away, but there was some trouble with some teams that just grabbed into the ground and held on. They kept pushing forward. As they got closer and closer, Mike was making everyone excited at the fight. Sorry Mike, got a trick up my sleeve, 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 thought as the other team got closer. No. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 yelled and the 2 friends held on to him since he was the rider. Then 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 started to float into the air and he used the air blast to move the entire team to the other side of the ring. Everyone was stunned since they just saw him fly with the entire team. What is this? When could he fly? Mike yelled, asking the question for everyone. He could always fly. It's a newer aspect he learned a few months before UA. So it doesn't have the best control, but he is getting the aspect of his quirk down quick. Aizawa stated to stop any confusion. Soon the round kept going and their team had grabbed quite a few other headbands from teams they had attacked. The round slowly came to an end and the round was called. They did it once again. 1A has taken the top spots once again. Will 1A Hero Corps students take all 3 top spots in the final round and hold onto their streak? Mike yelled. A 40-minute break was called and everyone was told to come back after lunch. The boys just hurried up and went and grabbed food before they sat down to eat. There were only 12 people left for the final round, since all top 4 teams only had 3 people each. After talking a bit more and relaxing, the lunch break came to an end. The next round was announced as the traditional 1 versus 1 tournament. The brackets were made and the first 2 people were called down to the stage. There would be 6 initial rounds and then it would go down to 3 next rounds. After that, the final 3 people would have a 3-way match to decide the final 3 winners. The first 2 people were called out to the field. One had a quirk that allowed them to grow small vines out of the ground and attack people with it. The other person had a quirk that allowed them to control air and send it out in blasts. This fight lasted about 5 minutes before it came to an end. The one with the vines was able to get them close enough to tie the person up. The problem with the person's quirk is that the vines move so slowly. As such, it's hard to be used in combat unless they decided to get creative. The second match fighters were called out to the ring. This time the fighter had a quirk that could send blasts of compressed air out, and the other person was 𝗨𝗱. The match started out with them both charging each other, but as they got closer to each other, Izuku noticed the other students start to get sluggish. The student still pushed on though as 𝗨𝗱 went down low and swiped the student's feet from under him. The student got up quickly and attacked again. 𝗨𝗱 had worked on his speed quite a bit and was able to dodge most of the attacks. He did take a few blows but overpowered the person soon after. He switched the feeling of sluggish to the feeling of being weak. This threw the person for a few seconds in which 𝗨𝗱 pushed forward and knocked the person down to the ground. He then pinned the student to the ground and held his neck in a chokehold. After about 30 seconds the person started to tap on the ground and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called the match. "Winner 𝗨𝗱," he called. The crowd cheered. The student didn't even get to use his quirk at all in the fight. The third match was 𝗧𝗪 and a student with a quirk that allowed him to cause shockwaves when he punches something. It sends vibrations through the person or object, and he can control how much it vibrates. 𝗧𝗪 threw blades from a distance and kept the person from hitting him or getting close. The person then punched the ground and made it shake, which felt like an earthquake was going on. This forced 𝗧𝗪 to charge forward and engage in close combat. He threw several blades as he charged to stop the person from making more shockwaves. He kept this up to keep the person moving, and then he got up within a handful of feet and put the blade to the student's neck. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called it. The student is unable to fight. In the real world that would be a death blow. "Winner 𝗧𝗪." 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called out. Once again the student from 1A won. Now it was Izuku's turn to fight. His opponent was someone with a shock absorption quirk. Izuku knew he couldn't win with direct punches since he didn't know the person's limit and he couldn't risk going over it and landing a blow that would kill the guy. As such, Izuku started using his personal fighting style that he created by combing the movements of float and one for all. He danced around the student and didn't aim for large blows but aimed to keep him off his feet. He kept doing this and doing this. Izuku was aiming to annoy the student until they failed to pay attention anymore. Soon after about 5 minutes of doing this, the student got up and charged at Izuku. However, that is what he needed as he had led the fight towards the edge. The moment the guy charged, Izuku stood still until a few feet in front of him, and then he jumped up and floated in the air. This causes the person to go right over the edge. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 called Izuku the winner as 𝗧𝗪 came over to the sound system and explained his plan. Midoriya used the quirk of his opponent to his advantage. Midoriya's quirk provides him a strength aspect and a flying/float aspect. As such, Izuku's strikes would be negated, so he made his opponents so angry that they lost track of their own movements and had them go over the edge by their own power. 𝗧𝗪 said as he explained it to the crowd, and they all cheered once they understood what he did during those 5 minutes. They all thought he was just toying with the kid, but now they knew he wasn't but using his brain to win easier. The next 2 matches went quickly as they just slugged their way through the matches, and it wasn't really interesting, or they were support students that just wanted to advertise their creations. I feel like someone will replicate this years later. Izuku thought as he saw 2 support course students just showing off their devices in their round since they weren't fighting each other. This is how the first rounds came to an end. This resulted in 6 people being left, with 3 of them being from 1A. Izuku felt like Nizu rigged the matches so no one in 1A fought each other, but Izuku wasn't going to complain since he wanted them all to take the top 3 spots. Soon the next round started. One of the students that passed was the person with the vines. 𝗧𝗪 was fighting this person. Overall it was an interesting match since he had to get close and personal to fight. though the vines were far too weak to hold up to his blades. He created thick but small blades that were sharp, and he just cut the vines apart as they came close. After about 3 minutes he got up close and threw a blade into their shoulder that forced them to stop the vine quirk. He then got up close and pinned the person down and held a knife to the throat, ending the match. The next match was Lloyd versus the person from one of the final matches in the first round. This person's quirk allowed them to create weapons similar to Salazar, but they were throwing weapons. The problem with that is, Lloyd just made them feel like they were drunk or in a similar state. How does he know the feeling like that? 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 thought. Lloyd won since the person couldn't aim anymore, and he just slugged him across the face, knocking him out since he was already sluggish and not in a good position to defend himself. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 asked him how he knew that feeling he pushed onto the other person. He responded that the doctors gave him drugs when he was younger that wouldn't hurt him but make him feel like that. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 accepted the answer since that was smart of the doctors. Now it was time for 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏's match. He had to fight one of the support corps students. They just sent some of their gear and 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 just blew it up by smashing it into the ground. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 felt a bit of pity for the student when they dropped to the ground and wailed out about their gear being destroyed. "Sorry. Please give up or I will destroy the rest of it." 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 yelled and they gave up within seconds. Now it was time for the last 3 people to fight. Listen up, folks. It's the last 3 fighters and they all come from one. Let's give it up for these bright students. I cried out. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 knew they both would come after him. The moment the match was called to start, he was right as Salazar came charging with blades. Lloyd sent the feeling of being drunk. However, 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 knew that he needed to concentrate on it for it to work. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 was able to dodge the blades as he jumped up and slammed a kick down on the ground, cracking it and causing it to shake hard enough for them to fall for a few seconds. Within those seconds, 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 grabbed Salazar since he was nearby and tossed him at Lloyd. "Catch!" he yelled out, and Salazar landed right into Lloyd as they fell onto the ground. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 used that time to get closer before they could get up. Right as he got close, Lloyd caused him to feel the effects again, which made him stumble. Salazar came with a blade and nicked 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 in the arm, causing some BLD. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 had to back up. Both of the other 1A members are working together to take down 𝗵𝗃𝗏. Will he pull it off and take first place is the question though. Mike said. Then Aizawa talked. 𝗵𝗃𝗏 is far more powerful in raw strength than those 2 can hope to put out. As such, they are using strategy and teamwork to take him on. It's also why we made this a 3-way instead of a single 1 versus 1 round and then another round for 3rd place. We knew they needed a chance to win if he ended up in the last round. Aizawa stated. Well, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 is conspiring against me. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 thought. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 then kicked the ground and made some rubble to break off. He picked it up the best he could under the effects of the quirk, and he had a hard time doing it since his coordination was off hard. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 then used the boulder he created by breaking the ground and threw it at them. He used float and went off flying behind the rubble he tossed since it blocked Lloyd from seeing him. Lloyd requires a visual of the person he is using the quirk on for it to work. He got close and then threw Lloyd off the ring. Everyone cheered, and then it was just 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 and Salazar. They charged each other and 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 used OFA to increase his speed, and he grabbed the blades and pulled them away from his friend. The moment he did that, he head-butted his friend, which made Salazar stumble back. At that moment, using float NAD OFA, 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 glided in his movements and swiped the feet from under Salazar. Then he pinned him down to the ground. We have our winner and we have our top 3. They are all from 1A, Mike yelled out. The crowd went wild. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 pulled both of his friends up onto the stage and held their hands up with his own. The crowd went even wilder as the display of sportsmanship. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏 had taken first place. 3rd POV, the sports festival had come to an end. The 3 boys had done it and secured the top 3 places of the sports festival. The medals were presented and the boys took them. They were dismissed to go back to the classroom and wait for Aizawa. After about 10 minutes of waiting, their teacher soon arrived back into the classroom. He stood at the front podium and looked at his students and then had a smirk on his face. Good job, you 3. You did amazing and helped hold 𝗬𝗧𝗏's name high with your performance. As you could guess, 𝗬𝗧𝗏 would have come under fire if you 3 did poorly, but our estimates are that the talk won't be about just the 3 Seoul students but 3 new rising students of 1A. As such, thank you for helping the school save face. Aizawa said. The boys just cheered at doing a good job to get a compliment out of their teacher. Now they talked about many things, but the most important thing that they talked about was internships. You will come back on Monday and you be provided a list of internships that have sent in requests for you 3. Due to the fact that there are only 3 of you, we expect you to gain high numbers since you did put on an amazing performance. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 stated. They were happy and couldn't wait to return Monday to see their results. After a bit more talking, Aizawa dismissed them and allowed them to go home for the day. Izuku and they all went out and hanged out in the city since they wanted to relax. They even decided to go to a kakapo bar and have some fun while singing. They kept going for a few hours before they decided to call it a night. Izuku decided to invite the 2 of them to meet his mother since he hasn't ever brought friends home since he has never had any. They agreed, and after about 30 minutes they found themselves in the Midoriya residence. Inko was so happy to meet the friends of her son since no one has treated him well in the past. Soon they were all sitting down and eating dinner with each other. Inko had cooked more food than needed and sent some with them home and thanked them for coming. As it was just Inko and Izuku, she spoke. Seems you have made really good friends, Izuku, Inko said as she looked at her son. Yeah, I did. I'm glad to have them in my life. I feel like I can just relax around them without any guards up since they were bullied as well in the past, so we know similar experiences. Izuku said. After talking for a bit longer, they finished up cleaning and they went to bed for the night. Izuku went to the warehouse during the weekend. He wanted to have a conversation with All Might. After arriving on site, he got to training since All Might wouldn't be around for an hour or so. Izuku has been pushing his training and he has been getting results. His control of float has been getting better, but it still needed work. What he was mostly interested in was his float combat style, or that is what he is now calling it. He's been taking the lessons from UA and making the fighting style more efficient with less wasteful moves. After about 1 hour of training, All Might arrived at the warehouse. Gran Torino wasn't in today since he went out on a patrol since he wanted to get used to the city in the event something happened. All Might entered in his skinny form and sat down and waited for Izuku to stop. After about 10 minutes, Izuku stopped his training and cooled down before walking over to All Might. How are you doing, my boy? You pulled first place and did an amazing job at declaring that you were here to the world. All Might stated. Izuku thanked him and then built up the courage to ask what he was going to ask his then. All Might, I want to tell Lloyd and Salazar about me being your protege. I'm not planning to tell them about OFA currently, that would be a topic for a few years once we graduate or are close. But I would like them to know about you and then also bring them here to train sometimes with me. Izuku stated while looking All Might in the eye. This topic caught All Might off guard. Izuku then explained a bit more. Sooner or later we will introduce me to the public as your protege, but that won't be until our last year of UA. I would like those 2 to know before then. We don't need to tell them about your form, but we would need to be more careful of when they are here and you are here in your skinny form if we don't. That would be your decision on your form itself. Izuku stated. All Might then sat there in silence and thought for a few moments. They have been amazing friends for Izuku. Nizu had already predicted that Izuku would ask me this and warned me. He also did deep background checks and gave me access to all of their information as well. All Might thought. He then sat up straighter and looked his protege in the eyes. I'll show them my form. I'll be honest, Nizu predicted this outcome. He saw how close you 3 had become and he did deep background checks and research of them in preparation for this. As such, bring them tomorrow and we can talk about all of it. All Might stated. Izuku was happy that this conversation went so easy and was sad that he was so easy to predict. All Might laughed and said that no one could really hide anything in front of Nizu. Izuku accepted that and felt a bit better. Izuku then texted his 2 friends and asked if they were free all day Sunday, and they said yes and asked why. Izuku explained that he wanted to show them somewhere and have them meet someone that was important to him who would also like to meet them. As such, the day came to an end and Sunday arrived. It was about 9 a.m. when Izuku had brought the 2 friends to the warehouse. They asked why they were at a warehouse but got shocked at what they found inside. Welcome to my personal gym, Izuku said as he showed them it. They were dumbfounded. Are you rich in disguises as a poor person? Lloyd asked in a somewhat teasing and serious manner since everything in the warehouse was top-of-the-line equipment.
No.
𝗧𝗑𝗧 said embarrassed. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 then walked up and hit 𝗧𝗑𝗧 on the leg without being seen by the others, which scared them. You brats need to work on your situation awareness, 𝗵 said. They asked 𝗧𝗑𝗧 if this was the person that he wanted them to meet.
No.
But you also need to meet him since he lives at this place now to help train me, 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stated. About 2 minutes later the door opened and the boys turned and saw All Might. They froze and then unfroze and then freaked out. "Ah, I am here," All Might said. He then walked over and sat down at one of the chairs in the room. "Good to meet you two boys. My protege has talked a lot about you too," All Might said with the purpose of embarrassing 𝗧𝗑𝗧. They then turned around and grabbed 𝗧𝗑𝗧. Lloyd held his arms behind his back while Salazar held 𝗧𝗑𝗧's head straight and looked him in the eyes. "You had All Might as your mentor. Why didn't you get US autographs?" He yelled. 𝗧𝗑𝗧's sweat dropped. "Really? That's what you are concerned about, is me not getting you autographs? Really?" 𝗧𝗑𝗧 asked. They responded with a yes. Everyone just shook their heads. "But now we are past the first stage. Why is All Might your 𝗵𝗃𝗃?" Lloyd asked. "There's the real questions," 𝗧𝗑𝗧 said as he hit his fist into his palm once the question was asked. They then gave the boys a truthful answer with just leaving some details out of it. The boys accepted it for the most part. "But I'll be honest. I know you're hiding something more than his form, but we'll accept it and trust that one day in the future you will tell us. I feel like it's something large and massive that I don't really want to know anytime soon anyway," Salazar stated with Lloyd agreeing. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 admitted it.
Yes.
"I'll admit it now. There is a larger secret that I don't want to tell you right now. It's not that I don't trust you guys. I think you would want to hear it closer to graduation when you are more prepared to hear it and understanding of the risks involved in it," 𝗧𝗑𝗧 stated. The two friends just hugged 𝗧𝗑𝗧 and told him that it was fine with them. They were glad that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was willing to trust them with all of this and at least admit there was another one that he planned to tell in the future.
No.
"It's time to get training, boys. Since you all know about my form, you can come join 𝗧𝗑𝗧 to train here at this warehouse. You can use your quirks in here as long as you don't bring the building down. I will get anything that you guys need to train since you three have been good as a team," All Might said. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 just smirked at the fact that he now had two new people to beat up during training. They all felt cold shivers go down their spines at his smile. Lloyd and Salazar cursed 𝗧𝗑𝗧 for introducing them to someone more sadistic than their own teacher. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 got them moving around and training. It was rough and grueling. "Now we know why you are so strong. This training is brutal." They both groaned out at 𝗧𝗑𝗧, who was not having any trouble at all. They were in shock. What? This is just a warm-up," 𝗧𝗑𝗧 said. They were done with him at this point. "Warm up my butt? That was a full exercise. Dear God, what is your body made up of?" Lloyd asked. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 just said willpower, determination, and spite. They all had blank looks on their faces as they cooled down as 𝗧𝗑𝗧 kept working. All Might walked over and asked them all what type of hero internship do they think they will be doing. They all said they wanted to do one together if they had the same requests that would allow it. "We want to do some internships together to make our teamwork better. Overall, as individuals we are strong but still growing. Our teamwork in battle is needing work. We can make a fierce fighting team if we have enough combat practice together, which will allow us to overpower enemies that we normally couldn't," Salazar stated. 𝗵 and All Might thought this was a very good idea, especially considering the fact that they are the sole students of the hero course. They won't have others to rely on when they graduate unless they make connections. Normally there are 2 full classes to make connections with easily when they graduate, but now it's just them 3. Soon the weekend came to an end and the boys stayed the night at 𝗧𝗑𝗧's house and slept on futons that 𝗧𝗑𝗧 had stored. Monday came around and the boys left early to return home to change and get ready for school. 𝗧𝗑𝗧 was able to change earlier and arrive at the school sooner than normal since he woke up early to see them off. After about 40 minutes the other 2 arrived at the school and came in to find 𝗧𝗑𝗧 doing some homework that they received from Friday. They also sat down and just got to working. They were surprised how their semester has been turning out so far since they are now in the middle of the semester and would be doing the internships starting next Monday if their requests got accepted. 𝗧𝗏 soon came in and presented the packets of requests. Good job again. Each of you received the same number of requests, which isn't surprising at all due to there only being 3 of you. As such, you need to decide out of the 4,000 requests on who you would go with. 𝗧𝗏 said as he gave them the packets. They started to look through the packets and found that they had gotten requested by pretty much the same heroes. They noticed that they had a few of the top heroes that requested them. They received a request from Ninja Hero, 𝗳𝗏𝗃, and also from Fiber Hero, Best Jeanist. There were a few others like 𝗫𝗫𝗏, but none of them really liked him and didn't want to learn from him. They decided on going with 𝗳𝗏𝗃 as their first request to see if he would take them all on, and Best Jeanist as the second one. The reason they wanted 𝗳𝗏𝗃 instead of one of the higher ones is due to the fact that 𝗳𝗏𝗃 past was one of being discriminated against, and they knew he would know how they feel since he lived it. Second is the fact that 𝗳𝗏𝗃 has a large hero agency that focuses on team-based missions most of the time. He acts as an individual hero still a good portion of the time, but he does a lot of team-based missions. This would give the boys what they wanted in becoming individual heroes, but being able to function and work as a team quickly and efficiently with each other without any problems. As such, they presented their request to 𝗧𝗏. He looked confused since they all requested the same place. You all want to go to 𝗳𝗏𝗃. What? He asked, and they explained their reasons. 𝗧𝗏 thought and agreed that it was a good reason. I'll take these to Nizu and we'll call him since most don't request the same agency to internship at. We'll make sure he okays it or declines it by end of today so we can let you know. 𝗧𝗏 said as he left to Nizu's office. The boys just got back to work on their studies. Later that day their teacher had approached them. You're in luck. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 was surprised that all 3 of you wanted him. We explained the reason you gave us and he accepted it. He is willing to take all 3 of you on. 𝗧𝗏 stated. They were all happy with that information. Soon the week passed and the boys just kept their training going. They had also informed 𝗧𝗏 that Lloyd and Salazar were doing similar training to Izuku now and were training at the same location as him after school. 𝗧𝗏 was honestly amazed with the 3 of them and the level of work they keep putting in, though he would never admit it to any of the boys. 𝗧𝗏 made the changes to the school notes about the increase in their training out of school to ensure that the school didn't overwork them with physical training and focused more on application training with different simulations. Nizu had also provided all Might and Gran Torino all video footage of the 3 boys so both the school and they could keep track of the progress and be on the same level of what is going on in their schedules so no one overworked the boys. Soon the day of the internships was upon them. 𝗧𝗏 had scooted them to the train station and told them to be good, but he didn't think he would have to worry about it. Remember, don't wear the suits unless told by your internship advisors. Also, don't use your quirks unless approved. Don't break any laws, problem children. I would like to actually have you 3 still in my class once you return. So don't ruin it or else Nizu will make me do many other things and I don't get to sleep during your homeroom. 𝗧𝗏 said. Wow. He only cares about he sleeping in truth, doesn't he? The boys thought because 𝗧𝗏 put way more emotion in his words when he reached the sleeping portion of the conversation. They all told him they would be good little students and wouldn't cause any problems for him while they were gone. Indeed. We'll cause the problems when we return so you have more paperwork. Lloyd said, and 𝗧𝗏 just gave a death glare. This caused them to run since the train had just arrived and they wanted to escape. You know he is going to give us so much homework when we get back, right? Izuku stated, and they all agreed with that assessment. It was worth it though to see his face when I said it. He was so annoyed with that comment. Lloyd stated. The other 2 just shook their heads at their friend's antics. Izuku always thought Lloyd was going to be the chaos bringer and he was right from the start. They all just sat down and train and waited for it to arrive at their stop. It would take roughly 1 hour for them to arrive at their destination, so they decided to get a bit of sleep and traded off so they didn't miss the stop.